Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots to talk about here. As you were hearing on the show yesterday, pressure mounting on Keir Starmer after that intervention from the Scottish Labour leader. Among all of this, Ed Miliband has rebuked Wes Streeting after claims the Health Secretary is plotting a secret leadership coup against the Prime Minister. My goodness, it never, ever ends. We're asking a wider question here, though, about whether Britain is ungovernable. We'll come to that in a moment. Also this afternoon, a university debating society has banned a Reform UK MP from speaking to students. This is Bangor University's debating and political area refusing to host an event with Sarah Pochin, she's of course the MP for Runcorn, claiming that it was keeping hate out of our universities. Oh, get in the bin, you half-wits. We'll look at that story in more detail. And a new report has found that millions of families will never see their living standards double, despite how much harder they work. We've got a societal problem in that respect. Keir Starmer is speaking this afternoon on cost of living. We'll bring you the details, everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. Lots to get through. Asking, has Britain become ungovernable even? 0344 499 1000. We're all familiar with the basic nuts and bolts of how news stories are covered. Remember, of course, this only happens every 4 years. We're all there waiting, tuning in for the drama from time to time. Much of that time, it's a bit boring. Moments come, moments go. Sometimes we enjoy it, sometimes we don't. But it's fair to say that it's always that big downhill moment where we begin to really sit up and take note. Our favourite part, the excitement, the twists and the turns, popcorn at the ready. And then, of course, the inevitable crash, the speed it happens, the devastation, and can you pick yourself up after such a big fall? Yes, the Winter Olympics, boom, boom, are back. It's not the Olympics, though, of course. It's the Westminster Olympics that's going on here. We covered this live yesterday. The plotting, the statements, the comeback. Starmer might now well be the Lindsay Vonn of Westminster. She's got a broken leg. He's got a broken government. Although, if you listen to his cabinet, you'd be forgiven for thinking everything is fine and dandy.
The Minister has my full support as the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, and I know he has the vast majority of colleagues' full support as well.
Yeah, not sure about that. Yesterday, Starmer, the Prime Minister, was whisked off back to Westminster on a dark, rainy night to a private meeting with the Parliamentary Labour Party, his MPs. He pleaded calm and unity. He told them, as long as I have breath in my body, I'll be in that fight. Yeah. Hang on, a man who's only been there for 18 months is making statements about his last breath. This is the kind of language you expected at the end of Blair or even Thatcher after a decade in power. As long as I have breath in my body. I mean, it's hardly Braveheart territory, is it? I think there's a wider issue on all of this, and it isn't just about Starmer and this awful Labour government. This is actually bigger. It's about the way we, as a people, as voters, as humans, do business. This land that we live in now, and I think you'd agree with this, is more divided than it has been for decades. Now, the media plays its part. Social media is the kind of grubby engine room behind the mood of the nation. The media then try to please the public, often by aping or parroting the aforementioned social media. The politicians try to please the mainstream media, and then the social media acts as a kind of weird judge deciding who is right and wrong, but never obviously coming to a conclusion because no one can agree on anything. And then the whole process starts again. We never actually get anything done. Now, we played this clip yesterday. It comes from the former Tony Blair Director of Communications, Alistair Campbell, a man who is rarely on the money, frankly, but, as the saying goes, a stopped clock is right twice a day. Have a listen to what he says.
Because of the nature of our politics, the quality, if you like, of our politicians and the political gene pool, the nihilism of much of the mainstream media, the anarchy of social media, with dissonance, hypocrisy, short-termism, naivety, industrialised rage and willful ignorance off the scale, that we're becoming almost ungovernable, that neither the parties nor the public are really prepared to face up to the big things that need to happen to turn this country around.
Has he got a point? Everyone, every place, every institution, political party, the inexhaustible supply of commentators and media outlets are all playing to a gallery. Those galleries are entrenched in their own views like never before. Is the UK ungovernable? He goes on to talk about how the media treat the entire shebang like a soap opera. And it is a bit like that, a soap opera or a kind of big game of very disorganised football. Something is happening here. And you kind of wonder, the job of a Prime Minister is now sort of impossible. Would a replacement make fundamental difference? Will we just be moving the chess pieces if we just end up in a kind of same position but with a different lot running the place? So you might have reform there, but all those people that passionately hate reform, they'll be as entrenched as the current people who passionately hate Labour. So nothing fundamentally changes, and then the media aren't quite sure how they should report this. They'll end up rather reporting half-wits on social media who've got nothing to say. When you know, Labour voters, Tory voters, Reform voters show their anger. And it's just a bloke called Bob on social media who's written a piece and a load of his mates have commented. That gets reported on. Nothing gets done. Governments are scared to make big decisions and sometimes uncomfortable decisions because they're scared witless about the media are scared witless about social media is scared witless of itself because nobody ever agrees, and you have this kind of bizarre moment. You're just in a massive circle and nothing ever gets solved. Is the UK, is Britain becoming ungovernable? It's a fairly wide question. Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. Thoughts on the wider issue, of course, as we continue to talk, analyse and wait with bated breath to see the next movement coming out of Downing Street. We know today the Prime Minister is on the road. He's in Hertfordshire. Talking about cost of living. We might get something from that speech. I might save you the hassle and the stress of having to listen to it live, and we'll just bring you some of the salient moments. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Andy Preston is a political commentator, but mostly known, of course, as the former independent mayor of Middlesbrough. Andy, good to see you again. Good afternoon.
Hi, Ian. Good afternoon.
We do live in very strange times, don't we? I mean, everything I've just described there and the point that Campbell makes in that little clip. I mean, there is some truth in this. It's sort of a war zone out there. I don't know if it's a soap opera or a war zone. Are we ungovernable, though, Andy?
Well, Alistair Campbell's right, and I think you're right, but it's entertainment. Politics has become entertainment, Ian, and basically we all tune in, and it's really exciting. Yeah. And there are goodies and baddies, and who the goodies are depends on your own perspective, and you'll cheer for them and boo the others. It's become more and more like theatre than it ever was. But whether we're ungovernable, I'm not sure, but we're certainly on the road to that. And I'll explain what I mean, is that governments now can't govern. They can't make any tough decisions. Keir Starmer's got a significant majority, not that many votes, but a significant majority. He could, in theory, pass loads of controversial bills, change laws, make big changes. But all the stuff that he wants to do that's difficult, his backbenchers, the people that would vote with him normally, they're not voting with him because they're scared about losing their job. They're watching, as you mentioned, social media, they're watching social media reactions, but they're thinking 3 years down the line, there's going to be an election. If I vote for benefit cuts, everyone who gets benefits in my constituency is going to vote against me and I'll be turfed out. So we're in a situation now where politicians and governments will never make tough decisions. And Ian, we're on a road to going bust. We're not there yet. We're not like Greece was 15 years ago, but we're at stage 2 of this 10-stage journey to going bust like Greece did. And we don't have any government that's confident, strong, or powerful enough to make the tough decisions to stop it happening.
Yeah, and that's where I'm thinking of the welfare reforms that never happened. I mean, that was an obvious one, with backbenchers squealing and saying, no, we won't support this. Then, of course, Starmer will look terribly wounded if he did, if he did try to go ahead with it and lost the vote. So they decide not to do it. Does it need somebody at the top then, regardless of whether it's your flavour of politics, who will always go with their philosophical kind of political antenna on this? Does it need that?
It does, Ian, but I think that, for example, Margaret Thatcher, who even people on the left these days look up to and admire, don't they, for her strength of character, her resolve. She was a conviction politician. I think she would have come a cropper. Public opinion sways so much now, and there were sort of 2.5 parties back then. If you were a Conservative MP, you always knew that you'd be in with the shout of being re-elected next year. If you're a Labour MP now, you know that reform's breathing down your neck, the Tories are breathing. It's much harder now to retain your seat. So I'm not even sure that Margaret Thatcher would do it. What would work is a strong leader like a Thatcher or someone on the left with a similar personality. But what they've got to do is tell a story and convince the electorate that tough things need to happen, and to take the electorate with them and explain that it's going to be really tough for a few years, but I promise better times are going to be ahead. Yeah. We've got a very short-term mentality, and that's where they come a cropper.
It's interesting because I was looking at one sort of element of this that wouldn't have existed a few years ago. When Boris Johnson was having the whole Partygate, COVID kind of, problems around Downing Street, and obviously the media were, trying to unpick what has happened, Barnard Castle, Boris's caterpillar cake, somebody's leaving do, and the list went on. There was a huge online social media, almost a I don't know if it was a campaign or just a sort of verbal battle, that this was the left-wing media in action, trying to unseat Boris. Our Boris, as people called him back then. Oh, how times change, Andy. But that's how it was kind of framed. I noticed today that because obviously Starmer has been in the spotlight, he nearly resigned yesterday, so lots of the media speculating and writing their pieces and doing bits to camera and on TV and radio shows about that. Suddenly, it's gone the other way. It's the right-wing media that are trying to get Keir Starmer out. In fact, in some cases, I was looking at somebody calling Chris Mason, who's the BBC's political editor, of course, a reform member. He's a reform member. He's doing reforms work for him. So people lose their mind, and that thing of confirmation bias that everybody suffers from to a degree. I've never seen it like this. Now, a decade ago, that couldn't have happened because we didn't have these platforms.
So yeah, that's exactly right. Social media has given us higher highs and lower lows. It induces anger, and you find other people that agree with you. We're far more reactive. And as I say, because politics is becoming entertainment now, you might have noticed, and your listeners and viewers might have noticed, that the news channels are covering more and more politics. They're actually reducing the business coverage. And they're increasing the political coverage because it is entertainment. And the journalists now are writing in a style as though it's entertainment, like there's goodies and baddies, and almost encouraging the public to feel that fury or feel that love. So our emotions are moving back and forth much more quickly. We're all consuming more politics, but not in a very healthy way. And I do fear that we're heading towards this ungovernable situation. However, the bright spot for me, the positive side for me, is if we get a good leader, a strong leader, who's also able to tell a story and explain that it's going to be tough. The medicine that we need is going to taste horrible, absolutely horrible. Yeah. But once we've had it, we can be on a much better path. And if we can get someone that can explain that and sell that to the public, then I think that's when we fix things.
Yeah, indeed. We're in a kind of wait and see, I suppose, holding pen right now. Let's move, Andy, to this story. Bangor University, meant to be very open and accepting as a place, as an empire of learning. Well, according to this clip, anyway, have a listen.
What we lack in size, we make up for in heart, and we are dedicated towards supporting each individual student at every process in the journey.
There it is, supporting the individuals on all of this. And then yesterday, Andy, this happened.
I've been cancelled by Bangor University. I'm not actually sure if that's a badge of honour.
Sarah Pochin, the Reform MP, has been told she ain't wanted round those parts, Andy. I always find it weird that a university bans anyone they disagree with.
They should never ban anyone, literally never ban anyone, unless there's a safety issue, of course. But Sarah Pochin should be very proud to be banned. I think it is a badge of honour. It shows that you say something interesting. The truth is, if no one's ever offended, then you're not saying anything interesting. I mean, there was an article, interestingly, in the Times today, and what this writer was saying, can't remember her name, what she was saying was that people are lonely, especially young people, and also all the research shows that young people now don't have friends that disagree with them as many as we did perhaps 20, 30, 40 years ago. And what that's doing is making people less or much more sensitive when someone disagrees. It's actually mollycoddling you that you're only hanging out with people who agree. And this Bangor ban of Mrs. Pochin is exactly a symptom of that. It's madness. And actually, the students, and it's students taking the decision. The students shouldn't be allowed to do this. Now, I know that the idea of university is empowering younger people and putting them in charge, but when they're doing things like this and actually destroying free speech, eroding democracy, that right to ban people should be taken from them. Absolutely should not be allowed.
Yeah, spot on. Listen, stay with us, Andy. We're going to be back with more in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. Comments on that. Look, these stories come around every now and again. Somebody is banned because of their views on trans issues or because they said something that some half-wit decided was racist, even though it demonstrably wasn't. So it's all of that. But, Reform are doing quite well in the polls. There's a lot of support for Reform, and many projections, in fact, I think we can fairly say most projections, based on now, suggest they would be the next government. So curious, you want to ban one of their only MPs, a female MP as well, if that brings a different flavour to the debate. 0344 499 1000. Wider question about the democracy and the weird world we found ourselves in, with the constant bickering, arguing, shouting, the ferocious nature with which we debate, the soap opera style of how the media is functioning when it comes to politics, and of course politicians themselves, everyone playing to a different kind of weird gallery. It's like we're in one huge sort of Mad Max style video game. Everyone vying for that. My gallery is bigger than yours. Look, I got this retweeted, I got this liked X amount of times, this was shared 10 million times, etc. Can we just get the business done? Because we are approaching a place where this country, regardless of who the leader is ungovernable. Is that fair? 0344 499 1000.
So in the time that Labour have been here, more people have come illegally, young men, fighting age men, men that do not share our culture, have come to our country And we are now facing a situation where our army is smaller than the amount of illegal migrants that have come here under this Labour government. Any government can smash those gangs, any government can turn back those boats. Again, it is about the will of the government to do it. It can be done. They've done it in Italy, they've done it in Australia. We can do it here.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. We have Andy Preston with us, political commentator, former mayor of Middlesbrough as well. Let's move to this one, Andy. A new report has found that millions of families will never see their living standards double. This is despite how much harder they work. And of course, wasn't this meant to be Labour's #1 priority to help people in this area? Let's have a listen to the Prime Minister.
For so many people, the cost of living is the #1 issue, whether they feel better off, whether they can make ends meet. And that really matters to me, it matters to this government. When I was growing up, we didn't have enough money, and sometimes we couldn't pay the bills. I know what it feels like to be sitting around your kitchen table worrying about that. And I'm determined that we will bear down and deal with the cost of living. That is why we've introduced free school meals to the extent that we have, free breakfast clubs.
Loves a breakfast club, does our Keir, Andy. This is the Resolution Foundation. They forecast that Britain's poorest families will not see a doubling of their living standards for 137 years. Which is an extraordinary figure. By the year 2163. I don't think most families can hang on that long.
No, no one can hang on that long. What's happening, Ian, is that the economic growth that we were told we were having for years and years now wasn't real. What was happening is immigration was swelling the population. The economy was growing because the population was growing. So per head, per individual, per person or per family, nobody's been better off for years now.
Yep.
Now, one of the reasons, or the biggest single reason, is that the government, the state, keeps growing. The state is a really inefficient user of money. Of course, it has a role, it's essential for many things, but the bigger you make the state and the more you tax people, the less growth you have in the economy. Now, growth is a boring word. I know it's a tedious concept, but economic growth is how you make people richer.
Yeah.
So what we have to do, and it gets back to what we said earlier, it's a difficult decision for government. You've got to reduce taxes. Now, that means reducing government spending, including benefits. It means getting people off the sofa and into work. And Ian, it's going to be really tough because governments don't like taking those decisions, because while everyone says they want to see benefits reduced, when it's your sister or your son or your mother who might lose a benefit, people will vote against it.
Yeah.
So it's a very tough thing to do, but it's fixable. It's fixable, but it's going to take a really strong, brave government.
Yeah, and that sort of harks back to the first point we were making, doesn't it? In terms of, you know, we've brave decisions have to be taken. But we are in such a short-term mentality that by the time any government, whether it's this one or another one, decides they're going to do something half bold, everybody has started squealing from their respective galleries, and they just lost their bottle and gone, oh, we can't do it, so nothing gets done.
That's right. Do you know what would work, Ian? We'll never have it. I'm not arguing for it. But if a government was there for 10 years, let's say, what they could do is take the really tough decisions at the beginning.
Yeah.
And after 4, 5, 6 years, if they'd done it right, things would start to come good. This cycle that we have is just too short, because by the time you're getting into 18 months and you start thinking about tough decisions, you've got half an eye on the next election.
Of course you have.
And you're worried about keeping your job.
And this lot could have done it, but instead they focused on removing some winter fuel allowance and upsetting farmers, which was just an extraordinary agenda.
Totally, and again, Ian, I mean, the Institute for Fiscal Studies was really clear on this. It was the way that they didn't tell a story or explain it. Felt that pensioners were being picked on and farmers were being picked on. If they'd said, do you know what, things are going to be really tough, we're in a mess, but we can fix it, and the future is going to be brilliant. But we're going to have 2 years of pain, and everyone's going to share it.
Yeah.
We're going to have a bit of some tax increases, some this, some that. I don't think many people would disagree with that. But it felt arbitrary. It felt we're going to take money off the pensioners, we're going to punish the farmers. It was a terrible bit of communication.
Let's move to this story, Andy. How many people at the age of 5 wanted to be a train driver? I was thinking about this today before I'd even read this story. It probably sounded exactly like this.
I want to be a train driver,
says Robin.
I want to be a train driver too,
says Daisy.
That's how we used to educate kids, Andy. They were the heady days, of course. I don't know how train driver got into that kind of specific area, which is great, by the way, because thank goodness for good train drivers. But it might be something kids can do sooner than they thought, because they are changing the minimum age for a train driver. It's going to be lowered to 18. Currently, it's 20. Is that right? Is it just basic common sense, or is it, frankly, horrifying that an 18-year-old is going to be driving you to Hartlepool?
It's potentially both, Ian. I mean, there's a shortage of drivers, and it's going to be a lot worse in 2, 3, 4 years as many retire, because the average age is ancient. So we need young blood coming through. So it sounds great, reduce the age. The problem is youngsters, especially young men, their brains aren't mature. Your brain doesn't mature as a man on average till your mid to late 20s. And that's why if you're 18, you're 4 times more likely to be in a bad car accident than a 25-year-old. You're 10 times more likely than a middle-aged guy. And that's why having people under 21 could be quite risky. So I think this is something we need to handle really carefully. I totally get the shortage. I totally get bringing young blood in. But we need to find a way of somehow screening these people, and I don't know how they do that.
Yeah, I don't know how you do, really. I mean, in an ideal world, I always think to myself, you know, should you be a police officer until you're at least 30? But then you think, well, I don't know, there's quite a lot of work a police officer does that wouldn't necessarily be age-related. I think if you're dealing with sort of perhaps domestic-based issues, that's a bit tricky if you're 19 years old, perhaps. So it will always, I guess it will always be up there, but apparently this new initiative for train drivers is in line with Switzerland, Germany and Australia, where apparently it works brilliantly and they've got lots of 18-year-old train drivers.
Well, the Swiss trains always run on time, Ian, so if it helps with that, we'll all be for it.
Indeed. Just a final one, very briefly on this one, Andy. MI5 have briefed more than 70 university vice-chancellors warning about hostile states that might be spying, intimidating, censoring or coercing students on campus. What do we make of this? Sir Ken McCullum said Beijing seeks to shape teaching and research. I mean, should we be? I think we should be a bit worried when MI5 are briefing universities about it.
It sounds chilling, doesn't it? I mean, you know what? It's really clear there's so many bad things going on campus. We've got this spying here. We've got the cancel culture. The fact that the Emirates won't send their students to the UK because they might get radicalised. It sounds like there's a lot going wrong in our unis. I think the truth is that there are spies everywhere. Spies everywhere. I was amazed last week with the Starmer's trip to China. People say, "Oh no, we shouldn't go because they spy on us." Of course they spy on us. Everyone spies on us, and we spy on everybody else. That's the way the world is, and it always will be. But I think there's a particular problem with technology in China, and a lot of Chinese students come to UK universities, like thousands and thousands, and there is a lot of spying. So I think it's a reminder. I think it's sensible. We shouldn't stop them coming, but we should be super careful what access we give them to sensitive commercial and military projects.
Spot on again. Andy, great to have you with us as ever. Thank you, Andy Preston, political commentator, former mayor of Liverpool, with us on the programme. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. On that question, has Britain become ungovernable? Here's one from Dave, thoughtful one. Campbell. We played that little clip from Alistair Campbell, who I think rarely, most of you these days would think, well, would I ever agree with Alistair Campbell? As I mentioned at the top, even a stop clock can be right twice a day. He talks about Britain being ungovernable for a whole variety of reasons. Dave says, Campbell, the inventor of spin, has no point, as he and Blair are the architects of the political environment in which has now installed an extreme left-wing domination in our institutions, which is now causing the divisions we see. People have now woken up to the damage that this pair and their minions have inflicted on us over the years. I think until the public see a party leader with the national interest at the heart of their policies, those divisions and the lack of progress we are seeing will carry on. Labour and Starmer Starmer have clearly not got the interests of this nation and the majority of its citizens in their hearts and their policies, and the Tories claim that they do have, but basically they've not changed and no one trusts them to deliver on policies they failed to deliver over 14 years. History shows the strike leaders, history shows that a string of leaders with direction carry the majority with them. Unfortunately, some have proved less than good, but others, even in our own country, prove it, and providing the majority of our citizens can see that supporting the leader will improve their situation, despite tough times to live through, that leader, if they have honesty and integrity, will succeed in uniting the country. I'd like to think everything Dave in Bristol says there is bang on, but as I said at the top, if you switch Keir Starmer to Nigel Farage, all of those angry voices at the moment pointing and heckling Labour, the opposition to reform will be pointing and heckling them through these amplified chambers of mainstream media and, crucially, social media might be small, but it's sizable and it's significant. And the media love nothing better than showcasing their so-me credentials by quoting social media as if it's the flipping oracle when it's normally nothing like it. So we have this kind of, yes, I mean, Blair and Campbell did kind of reinvent the relationship with the media. Now I'm noticing, despite what Dave just said, people are now calling the BBC right-wing because they were reporting on Keir Starmer almost legging it from office yesterday. So that's that short-term analysis that many people have. Dave, brilliant message, by the way. Thank you for that. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk to one man in a few moments who's been in government under Thatcher, under Major, and more. Details to come right here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk. An awful lot to get through. Is or has Britain become ungovernable? That was certainly a claim that has been made. Keir Starmer stated last night he's not prepared to walk away after what a 24 hours. When we came on air yesterday, by the way, none of the Anasawa stuff had happened. We didn't even know it was going to happen. It was impromptu. And then, of course, the flurry of cabinet ministers saying, no, we support Sir Keir. Of course we do. He says he's going to fight for his future within the Labour Party. Yet the question is also raised of the overall issue within Britain. And although you might rarely agree with Alistair Campbell, do you think he makes a good point when he says this?
Because of the nature of our politics, the quality, if you like, of our politicians and the political gene pool, the nihilism of much of the mainstream media, the anarchy of social media, with dissonance, hypocrisy, short-termism, naivety, industrialised rage and willful ignorance off the scale, that were becoming almost ungovernable, that neither the parties nor the public are really prepared to face up to the big things that need to happen to turn this country around.
Any truth in that? In a moment, we'll speak with Lord Peter Lilly. First, Adam Cherry, editorial director of Guido Fawkes. Nice to have you with us. In fact, I slightly blame Guido in some of this because you guys like to mess it up a bit for the system, and that's why we love reading it on a daily basis. I tell you the other reason why, Adam, just a sort of side point here. The other reason I love you, I never know whether it's going to. I always imagine when the email comes through on a daily basis, here comes Guido. It could be 4:30. Could be 6:30. I think, is this dependent on when they want to go to the pub, or are you waiting for a specific deadline to happen? I think it's probably a mixture of the two, right?
No, it's always dependent on news flow. It's never dependent on how thirsty we are.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we'll park that for one side. Look, yeah, we like to have fun. I would say we like to hold these politicians to account because so many of them are so rubbish. It's our civic duty to do so. I would actually say I agree with part of what Alistair Campbell said yesterday, which is that the political gene pool in our country is so poor. That explains partly why we're run so badly. I don't think, as a general principle, the country is ungovernable by dint of social media, Guido. The traditional press held the same sort of role 20, 30 years ago when Alistair Campbell was roaming the earth. So I don't buy that. What I do think is, like I said, the caliber of the politicians is poor. And also, to be fair, there have been a couple of shocks recently. We spent hundreds of billions of pounds during COVID. You can debate that till the cows come home. But the point is, we need politicians who are willing to say that we've got to tighten the belts a little bit, stop spending so much, live within our means, and take what they would describe as tough decisions to balance the books a little bit. And obviously, you're never going to get that with this lot.
True. They're quite scared, though, aren't they? Do you sense, Adam, they're a bit scared to do this? Because obviously, certainly with Starmer, and they had sort of welfare reform, and they had to stick that in reverse gear very quickly because the backbenchers discombobulated, so that was never going to happen. But I wonder if there is another thing. Back in the day, and we'll be speaking to Peter Lilly in a moment, back in the time when Peter was in office, it was all a very simple process. You woke up in the morning, you read either the Daily Mail, the Mirror, the Sun, the Telegraph or the Times. That's how you got your news. You might have watched the news at 10 late at night, and that was kind of it. And now we have a whole very different array, and hence the reason why I mentioned the Guido Fawkes and areas such as that. We have social media. If I'm really bored, I could listen to Alistair Campbell's podcast with Rory Stewart, The Rest is Politics, or as a better alternative to that, I could gnaw off my own elbows. Now, there's obviously big choice there, and I wonder whether governments are not just playing to the back benches, but all those spin merchants in Downing Street are listening to people like you and me and the social media element. They're listening to the podcast. There's no direction. They're scared witless to have a central philosophy for fear of upsetting someone. And, of course, in the event, they upset everybody.
Okay, so I suppose you could argue that they're in hock to a 24-hour news cycle. Yeah. I think that's a more credible argument. What Campbell seems to be doing is really blaming his political opponents for having strong social media games, and therefore that's why the team he backed all the way into 2024 is now completely crumbling. That I have less time for. But again, it comes back to the central point that we have low-caliber politicians who, the news cycle is now more pluralistic, and there's a more diverse set of views you can get at no moment's notice. But that doesn't mean that you have to listen to all of it, and it just requires a certain credible, certain caliber of politician, rather, to say, actually, I know what I think, I know what is best for the country. Yeah. It's my job as a politician to package this in a way that is credible to the voters, and then just stick to it. Starmer came in with a massive majority. Okay, it's a very shallow one because a bunch of his MPs won on very tiny margins in their own seats. But he nonetheless came in with a huge amount of influence and power within the first 100 days at least, and he totally squandered it. And you can't blame that on anyone other than the government themselves.
Yeah, fair point. Yes, the butt stops there. Simple as that. Adam, great to have you on with us. We will speak again soon. Adam Cherry, editorial director at Guido Fawkes. Check them out if you don't, and subscribe, of course. Let's speak with Lord Peter Lilly, Conservative peer, former Cabinet Minister under Margaret Thatcher, and also John Major as well. Peter, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon to you.
What changing times, and I often wonder when I speak to somebody, and dare I call you an elder statesman, you know what it's like to sit around a cabinet table with Margaret Thatcher. I mean, that in itself, if you did nothing else in your life, I mean, there is a story you could retell for the rest of time. And I doubt, I'm sure once in a while you might have got a bit of a pasting from the Iron Lady. And of course, you worked with John Major too, and you spent a lot of time at the Department of Social Security, and that's relevant, of course, because that's one area that this current government are failing to get their grips on. Do you have any sympathy with Keir Starmer? I mean, obviously, you're not a Labour man, you're a Tory, but just as the mechanics of the process and getting things done and having backbenchers that are against you, do you sympathise with him? Is he the victim of the 24-hour news cycle we just spoke of, or is this just his own daft, stupid left-wing fault?
I think his failings are internal. He's useless, incompetent, has no political judgment, no strategy, no idea what to do. I want him to survive because the alternatives are even worse.
Yeah.
They would have a strategy which would be inevitably, given the composition of the Labour Party, more overt socialism, which will be disastrous for the country. It would mean more spending, higher taxes, more borrowing, and eventually the IMF having to come in and rescue us. And I want to avoid that. So if Starmer needs any help from his friends in the Conservative Party, I'm one of them.
When we hear people like Campbell, Alistair Campbell, who made a comment on his podcast saying, you know, that he believes Britain has become ungovernable, and he talks about various facets that have sort of led to that, the media treating politics like a soap opera, he says. And, you know, again, the point I was just making to our last guest, it was very simple back in the day. You got your morning newspapers and you might have caught the 6 o'clock or the 9 o'clock news. That was sort of it. Now we're surrounded by commentary. Is that a hindrance to governing a country?
I don't see that it should make too much difference. You get on and do it. The big difference is actually that we're now not governed by ministers, but by special advisors who are young, quite clever people who think it's all a technique, who think, oh, if I steal a bit of his policy or veer a bit over there, I'll get such and such a section of the voters and supporters or people in my own party. Whereas Mrs. Thatcher's approach was, what will the country need when I get into power? It'll have huge problems. What will I need to do? How will I win a mandate to enable me to do that? Well, who will I have to persuade, and how will I persuade them that I must be able to do that? And if whoever takes over in the Labour Party, I hope they'll take that approach. Actually, I think in the Conservative Party, Kemi, instinctively being an engineer, does take that approach, and that's been her approach. But either part, I'd like this Labour government to succeed rather than fail, because
it's our government,
right? The country.
Yes, of course. We often hear about, I mean, you mentioned special advisors perhaps having too much power. We often hear about what's now called the swamp, often, as in the civil service. When you were working in the Social Security Department or the Trade and Industry Department, did a permanent secretary tell you what to do, or did you tell them what to do? How did it work then?
When I arrived at the Department of Social Security, and I've heard this subsequently from the permanent secretary who was there when I arrived, they were pretty appalled at the thought that I was going to be their new Secretary of State. I was a former Treasury Minister, a known Thatcherite. They assumed I would probably want to grind the faces of the poor and take reckless decisions on the basis of ignorance. It's like, yes, Minister, there's a 6 weeks or so where they're finding out whether you've got any idea how to govern it or to run the department or not. After a little while, they realized I had, and we'd argue things through, and they were wonderful. The rest of the 5 years, they did what I wanted, and obviously I only arrived at my decisions after arguing things through with them.
Sure.
But often They were initially against it, but when they saw that we were heading in a coherent, consistent direction, they were wonderful.
Because we often hear that it's a kind of cesspit of left-wing half-wits that are running these departments. Do you have any sympathy with that view?
I think it's probably a bit worse from the time when I was a minister. There's been more of a sort of indoctrination of young people at universities who then go on into the civil service. But even in my time, probably the people who went to the DSS were initially quite left-wing. They thought they were going to help the poor who were having been downtrodden by the wicked capitalists. After a while, they realized, because they had to start off working in benefit claim offices, that there were a mix of people. There were genuine people in genuine need who we were rightly trying to help, and there were other people who were trying to exploit the system or trapped in the system. And when I said we just want to focus on those who are in need and make sure that those who are either trapped in the system get untrapped or exploiting the system cease to exploit it, they actually had a natural sympathy from experience.
Yeah, so somebody should have a word with the Labour backbenchers on that very specific point. That's how we obviously ended up with this curious reverse gear on welfare reform.
6 months in a benefit office, and they'd realise the difference between the two.
Absolutely spot on. In terms of going forward, do you sense? I was pondering at the beginning of this, Peter, whether if we change the. We often hear this term uni-party, that the Tories and Labour are essentially the same, and that's why Nigel Farage is the only person that can save the day. But of course, if Nigel Farage was Prime Minister, those people that currently support the other parties, they would be equally as animated in their angst against that government. So again, he's going to find and come up against the same problems.
Yes, he might. Actually, earlier you were saying that part of the problem is we got such diversity of news. Part of the problem in the past was that most of the news went through the BBC, and the BBC didn't allow certain views to be propagated on net zero, on immigration, and on Europe, on all three subjects until this week. I've not been allowed to talk for the last 20 years. It's better now. There are more outlets like yours to get views over, and therefore we can have a more serious national debate.
So democracy isn't dead, which I suppose is what this boils down to. We've still got it. We've just got to perhaps refine the core of it.
Only hope not, though you'll have gone dead.
Yeah, indeed. Listen, on that point, Peter, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you again, Lord Peter Lilly, Conservative peer, and of course former Cabinet Minister under the administrations of Thatcher and Major. Thank you to him. Has Britain become ungovernable? This from Mark in Essex, who says Thatcher, Reagan and Trump came to power with a vision, a journey to take us on. Oh, they absolutely did. They took their people with them, and if they didn't want to go on that journey, they were free to leave. I want my political party to have clear principles and aims that we can coalesce around. What I don't want is a broad church, which is why the two main parties can't govern, because they're constantly trying to appease the left and the rights of their own parties, and in the end get nothing done. And it does, you're absolutely right on that point, Mark, it does. It happens in the Tory party as well, as we know, and Brexit being the obvious example. On the Labour benches, you've got these very extreme divisions between the sort of Corbynites and the kind of Blairite thing. Do you know, I've no idea where Starmer is. On that spectrum, I suspect he's more left-wing than he likes to say he is. But the fact that I don't know, I can't like that tell you what our Prime Minister, who he is, who he stands for, what he stands for, what's his vision. Yeah, go Starmer. We know what he wants to get. I'm absolutely not a bloody clue. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
So in the time that Labour have been here, more people have come illegally, young men, fighting age men, men that do not share our culture have come to our country, and we are now facing a situation where our army is smaller than the amount of illegal migrants that have come here under this Labour government. Any government can smash those gangs, any government can turn back those boats. Again, it is about the will of the government to do it. It can be done. They've done it in Italy, they've done it in Australia. We can do it here.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Joel, slightly conspiratorially, but maybe correctly, says it's meant to be chaos in the political world at the moment. It's so that people will roll over and accept an AI government. It's coming your way soon. Yeah, from the people that bought you whatever. Well, you know what? That whole AI thing is... we don't talk about this enough. We do not talk about this enough, really, because it feels like we're just talking about, I don't know, a new bit of software or the latest development in social media platforms. And I sense it is so much, well, I know it is so much bigger than that. And if you look at the capabilities of it, then it is vast and game-changing. On the point of Sarah Pochin, by the way, Simon says, Ian, regarding Sarah Pochin being banned from speaking at Bangor University, if you have a look at Reform's policies, whether it's on immigration, economy or welfare, they're not dissimilar to the Labour Party prior to 1997 and Tony Blair, which goes to show how far left the UK now is as a society. You're absolutely right. If you went to, you know, the obvious Labour working men's club, and you could probably still do this a little bit now, but certainly prior to the Blair thing, all of the absolutely on immigration, you would find exactly those views. Exactly those views. Dave's down in London. Are we done for, Dave? Has Britain become ungovernable? Afternoon.
Oh, hi Ian, how are you?
Good. What are you thinking?
When you read that out from Campbell, I nearly fell off my chair and I wasn't even sitting on one. I mean, it all goes, all of this goes back to Blair, Brown, Campbell, Mandelson. They're the gang of four that kind of have led us to this. And Mandelson is like picking a scab off your knee, you know. I hope when you pick it off, you're going to find a lot more underneath it, which is going to be Blair, Mandelson and Campbell. They're all going to be connected to this. And for Campbell to come on and say Britain is ungovernable, what he means is it's not governable in the way I would like to govern it myself.
That's probably true, but he's also saying that the Labour Party are in the same position, isn't he? So which is his own party,
which he created. Those little guys sitting around the table these days, all saying we love Keir, we love Keir. Yeah, they're all part of the Blair, Mandelson, Campbell project. They are more or less their children. And what Campbell can see now is the game is up, because once this Mandelson thing gets ripped off, they're all going to be up for it, and Nigel Farage will be given an even bigger remit to name everything we need to get rid of since the Blair era, and start getting rid of it, line by line by line by line, all of it. Quangos, experts, the amount of people in government, the lot has to go, and we have to start again. That's where we're at.
Indeed, I get it. Dave, great call to start off with. Thank you very much indeed for that. We've got to start again. We do need to recalibrate. Daniel's in Epsom. I know you think a lot, Daniel, about this kind of stuff. The mad upside down, Alice in Wonderland, Hall of Mirrors world we currently find ourselves in. But are we ungovernable for the foreseeable future? Can anything change it, Dan? Good afternoon.
All right, Ian. Do you know what? I think at the moment we are pretty ungovernable, and I think one of the main reasons we are is because the sheer volumes of people that live in Britain now. If you think when I was in my teens, there were a quarter less before 1997. Basically, there were a quarter less people using the infrastructure. So just think how hard that is. You've probably got 73 million people trying to use an infrastructure fit for 50 million people, and that's why China are bringing in these digital IDs, and because they're trying to govern 1.3 billion people, right? A lot more than us, and they brought in all these because it makes it easier to govern. You almost govern yourself with social credit scores and stuff like that, and that's why governments like it, because
So it kind of, so in a way, what you're saying is it's sort of, it's not quite a conspiracy that we want to control your lives in the conventional sense. It's a conspiracy in that it's the only way we can make the system work is to have a certain amount of control over the people.
Yeah, well, it can't be policed. If you look at every day on the trains and underground and buses, there are tens of thousands of people every day not paying for a ticket, basically. All the little things that you would have seen as crimes years ago, like we've got more CCTV in the world than probably any other city, yet there's stabbings 2 or 3 every day in London. It's not actually fixing the problem. And if you want to fix the problem, my message to Nigel is, the immigration problem's a classic, right? We all know that we need to leave the ECHR and we need to create a British Bill of Rights to actually manage the immigration problem. That's widely known by both left and right, but the last 2 governments and this current one won't do it. And they won't do it because they're upsetting the apple cart, and we don't want to upset the European Union or the WEF. But that's what's required to actually fix the problem. And unless you have a government that comes in and does bold, brave things, I'd send a couple of experts into Whitehall, rip the place to shreds, loads of sackings. What's not working? Why is it not working? And you need to really rip out from the root, and you've got to be bold, and you've got to be brave, and you've got to be willing to do things that successive governments have shied away from. And the problems that we've all got are getting worse and worse because they've shied away from them. And Nigel's getting my vote. I've been out canvassing for him, Ian.
You have? You started early. It's not till 2029, Dan.
No, but I'm just trying to get people involved in the local branch.
Well, I bump into people all the time. My fear, and I've said this to you before, and it's not a fear of specifically Nigel Farage. It would be any party that's promising a sort of radical overhaul, because I 100% agree with that. A recalibration of the system, the status quo, the groupthink, all of that nonsense has got to go, and we need a philosophically led government that believes in what it says on its principles and its ideas. But wanting it and getting it done are 2 very different things. And of course, even if Nigel Farage comes in with a landslide, it will still leave us with the same reality as any election. That's that most people wouldn't have voted for him.
Yeah, but I think he'll have the majority, and I think he'll get a majority because most people in the country can see that the status quo isn't working, and we can all see that the status quo is, over time, is bringing slightly more decline and slightly more degradation every year, and things are getting slightly worse every year. We can't carry on as we are. The ConLab Uniparty is finished, and I think the British majority are going to go out there and vote for reform. I think they'll end up on something like 34%, because there's a lot of shy. If there were shy Tories, you can guarantee there's even shyer reform voters. And I think they'll get something like 34%, something like that, maybe 35%. Wow. And he'll lead a government. And I think when he comes in, yes, he's got an uphill task, but I think he should get behind the lectern and tell the country what he's going to do and do it.
And that is what I think most people want to hear, even if it's not your flavour or stripes of politics. You want to hear someone who says what they mean and means what they say. Daniel, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. More on the way. 0344 499 1000. You can leave a voice note there as well, or you can message 87222. Let's get the news now on Talk at 2 o'clock.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So much material. I've worked in this job a long, long time. I've never seen a news agenda so absolutely loaded with quality delights in terms of stuff to debate. Yesterday, of course, pressure mounting on Keir Starmer. All manner of things took place. Anna Sawar, the Labour Scottish leader, of course, called for him to go. But amongst all of this, Ed Miliband has supported Keir Starmer along with most of the cabinet. He's also, however, rebuked Wes Streeting after claims the Health Secretary plotted a leadership coup against the PM. Well, I think there's a few of them at it. They're just waiting till after May the 7th. We'll have more on that. We're asking the question, has Britain become ungovernable for a whole raft of reasons, not just what happened yesterday? Also this afternoon, a university debating society had banned a Reform UK MP from speaking to students. This is Bangor University. Their debating and political society refused to host an event with Sarah Pochin, claiming that it was keeping hate out of our universities. God bless the little lambs over there at Student Union HQ. We'll talk about that in just a couple of moments. And a new report has found that millions of families will never see their living standards double, despite how much harder they work. They'll have to wait something like 137 years until they can see a doubling of their current standards. That ain't going to work out well, is it? 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. This is Talk. Message from Ben in Stockwell, who says UK is becoming impossible to govern. No one wants to pay more taxes. Welfare cuts are opposed. Removal of child benefit cap opposed. The media cares more about foreign sexual criminals than the rich white men and the royal family members, etc., says Ben. I think most of that I understand. I'm not quite sure whether we could point for the media. I think at the moment is just kind of going where it senses there are most clicks or most views, and that's really how the different outlets are tilting themselves. They've got to have a thing, an angle, an attraction. Then they look at social media and go, oh, right, OK, that's doing rather well on social media. It's just some bloke who wangs on about something in particular, but somehow has galvanised 500,000 followers. So they'll pick up on that. So they're doing that. Meanwhile, the politicians are trying to please the media. The media is trying to get its stuff from social media. You've got a gazillion commentators all over the place, and podcasts left, right and centre, multi-channel TV and radio. It's an absolute jungle out there. And in the midst of it, we're trying to find democracy. Where is that democracy thing gone? Has Britain become ungovernable? 0344 499 1000. So let's move to this story that we've teased a couple of times. Bangor University. It's meant to be a very open and accepting place, remember. That's according... And there's a little clip here advertising the benefits of Bangor University. Have a listen.
What we lack in size, we make up for in heart, and we are dedicated towards supporting each individual student every process in the journey.
What we lack in size, we make up with heart, and we're dedicated to supporting each individual. Unless you're a Reform supporter, because yesterday this happened.
I've been cancelled by Bangor University. I'm not actually sure if that's a badge of honour.
Well, I think it might be a badge of honour, Sarah, to be honest. We'll speak to Philip Kisley in just a second from the New Culture Forum. First, Jack Anderton, political commentator, and of course it was with you, Jack, that this cancellation happened, right?
Yes, that's correct. So as part of my A New Dawn tour, which I've been taking across British universities, part of the tour stop was Bangor University with Sarah Pochin. She called me up and asked if we'd do an event. So my team reached out to the Politics and Debating Society at Bangor University, and they were pretty rude in their decline and called us hateful, called us transphobic, homophobic, and that we were not welcome at their society and on their campus. So it's really unfortunate. I think it speaks to a wider free speech issue, censorship issue in Britain. When all really we wanted to do was myself and Sarah Pochin was to come and have a good faith discussion about reform, about Britain's decline, about young people, about housing, but unfortunately we weren't able to do that.
These stories, of course, of cancellations, particularly in universities, I've covered them forever. I can remember Jenny Murray from Radio 4 being banned because of her, apparently her views on gender. I think even the Archdeacon of all things feminist, Germaine Greer, who I don't think anybody could really call some kind of extreme right winger. I think she was banned as well from. I mean, the list is absolutely endless. I thought by now, Jack, that particular slightly lily-livered, delicate student component had kind of grown up and realised not only is it a slightly bizarre thing to do anywhere unless you're in North Korea, but it's compounded, that confusion and that level of bizarreness, when it's on a university campus in their political and debating society. I mean, wouldn't somebody on the panel have gone, ain't this a bit weird that we're cancelling people?
Yes, you would think so. I mean, Bangor University is a pretty prestigious university. I believe it's the oldest university in Wales. But it's not just Bangor University. And actually, you brought up a few examples. There have been many of my tour stops that I've seen huge protests in. So I attended York University to give a speech. 400 people, Ian, turned out to protest me. They marched outside on the streets and towards the campus. 400
people, for goodness sake. You're not exactly Eugene Terre Blanche. You're just a bloke advocating a few ideas about the new dawn, as it were. For God's sake, what is wrong with these people?
Precisely, and I think partly they're very scared, actually, that they're losing control of the narrative, that they're losing control of the political discourse amongst younger people. Partly my job with Nigel was to help him be so successful on social media, especially on TikTok. And he's managed to do that. He's got 1.4 million followers on TikTok, predominantly most are younger people. So what you're seeing is that students of a left-leaning perspective are very scared about where their fellow students are going in their political discourse. So they're trying to shut down events like this, which again are in totally good faith. We're not coming to try and embarrass any students or make fun of them. We're wanting a good faith discussion, again, about the political issues of the day.
Do you sense, I mean, is this just some students being students? I mentioned at the beginning, Jack, I've talked about these kind of cancellations for a while now. Is it always going to be with us? I mean, again, I'm confused. I'm really confused that it happens, of all places, on quite literally the very last place on planet Earth you'd think a cancellation on speech would happen would be at a university free speech forum. I mean, it's bizarre in itself. Is it likely to change, or is this kind of with us forever?
Well, I think it's about creating a free speech culture, and part of that, the onus is on the universities to encourage their societies to allow these types of events to take place. Listen, I think you're always going to have radical young people. Young people tend to be more radical, so you're always going to have that component. But I think what you are witnessing is the majority of students are actually welcoming of new ideas. They're welcoming of new people, and I think the pendulum is changing, and hopefully it will continue to change over the next couple of years.
Indeed. Jack, we will speak again. Great to have you on. Jack Anderton, political commentator. He was due to be giving part of his tour. He's gone around various campuses with his New Dawn tour. Sarah Pochin from Reform was going to join him, but some of the students over there at Bangor University said, no, not this way, sunshine. You ain't coming in here with your hateful, nasty, vicious ways because you're not subscribing to gender issues or God knows what else they made up to help them feel nice and satisfied that they'd done the right thing and their moral compass was pinging in the right direction. And this is all extraordinary stuff. Let's speak with Philip Kisley, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum, regularly helps us out on these kind of stories, Philip. And, of course, a man who knows what it's like to be cancelled. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, Ian. I do indeed. And just listening to Jack there, yeah, absolutely. It rings so many bells. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. It's so appropriate we have you on with this. I mean, just explain for the uninitiated what happened to you in, 2023 now?
2023, quite a while ago, yeah. So I was talking quite a lot in the media about the Gaza conflict.
Yeah.
I was also talking about trans ideology, those two things, which a perfect storm of hatred against me because of that. There were posters with my face distorted and Philip Kisley Islamophobe. Now, when you have the Islamists going for you on campus, then that's pretty serious. and you have to kind of take care of yourself. And this kind of thing was happening right across campus. We had, you know, sit-ins, if you remember, pro-Hamas kind of rallies and God knows what. So it was a crazy time. But I don't think much has changed really over just reading this story now. That proves much has changed.
Indeed. And, you know, as I said to Jack a second ago, is it always with us, this mentality? You know, students will be students. And again, I can't say this often enough because I still find it very confusing that the last place you would imagine a cancellation could ever happen would be on a university campus from their own debating and political society, which is just bizarre. It's beyond satire that would happen.
It is. This is supposed to be a marketplace of ideas. You know, you're supposed to, at university, you're supposed to come up against ideas you actively dislike, and you're supposed to tackle them and deal with them. This is about growing up. But in these spaces, we've got two things, I think, primarily. We've got infantilization, and that's happened. That comes from the top. That comes from lecturers. It comes from management. This is the, you know, the arena of safe spaces. This is the arena of microaggressions and all of that kind of thing, but also rank hypocrisy as well. These people will also be fully supporting Gaza, you know, and you show me any openly gay people in Gaza or in any country in the Middle East apart from Israel. You know, this is, they will turn a blind eye to anti-Semitism. They will do all of that kind of stuff. So this is just brute politics. This is looking at reform, being frightened of them because they are gaining momentum, and shutting down debates. And what these people don't think about, and this is the stupidity, right? Reform are probably going to be the next government. They are going to be writing education policy. They are going to be organising funding for education and research. It is down to the universities to make sure that these student union debating societies absolutely toe the line when it comes to free speech. They need to be open, and it's actually down to the adults in the room. The problem is the adults in the room won't be adults in the room. They are, you know, retread adolescents. They are, you know, they are revolutionaries. They are Marxists, for God's sake, and that's the problem we have.
Indeed. On that point, Philip, great to have you on. A qualified voice and then some on this particular issue. Philip Kisley, senior fellow at the New Culture Forum, who found himself cancelled and unbelievably maligned because he had a different view to some of the students. So therefore, he was an Islamophobe. Got to stick the word phobe after stuff in order to try and make sense of your own insanity. That seems to be what's going on. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Matthew in Warrington on the free speech university ban. Matthew, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hi, Ian, all right, mate.
Yeah,
nice
good.
To speak to you again.
You too.
Yeah. So, you have debates.
Yeah.
You all sit there, you've all got your own opinions on a certain subject. Some's right, some's wrong. And you're entitled to have an opinion, but you're also entitled to change your opinion if someone's changing it. That's what I like about talk, because a lot of things I listen to, and I have an opinion on something, I go, oh, I never look at it that way. So what's happened here now is, from the Blair years, when all left-wing students took over and went into university and now are becoming left-wing judges and lawyers, they've got their own opinion, and their children are going to university with more of an opinion. So now you're not allowed to have an opinion unless it suits them. So what these young people that are at university now that won't listen to anyone else's opinion or agenda, what's it going to be like in 20, 30 years' time when their CEOs or head of a police constabulary or head of a NHS trust? Because so we're making it more left-wing, and it's going to be hard to... You can't not go somewhere and say... It's like me and you having a chat. Say we had a chat about the Falklands War, and you just went, well, it shouldn't have happened. The Maldives belong to the Argentinians. When I say it's British sovereignty, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually you go, oh, yeah, you know, I believe that. Okay, you know, you change your mind. You might not change your mind, but it opens your mind to different ideas and understand other ways, people's way of thinking. And they're closing that down, and that's wrong. And these universities that are doing that and stopping people from having a debate, they should have the funding cut. They should be fined for it.
Well, they might find themselves, as our last guest, Philip, just said, on this point, Matthew. If Reform become the next government, they may well discover they have their funding curtailed if they don't adhere to, well, basic common sense, which is, you know, let a multifarious group of people have their voice. And that's the issue. Matthew, I've got to move for time, but great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. All I would say on the, you know, these are the students that are going to grow up and they're going to become CEOs and chairmen of boards and God knows what else. Of course, what tends to happen is as you grow up, you alter your politics. Now, you might alter them to be more left-wing, you might alter them to be more right-wing, but what seems to be the general pattern, there are exceptions to this, is that extreme students of whatever nature end up somewhere in the middle, and the minute they realise they want to, you know, I don't know, buy a house, go on holiday, realise you've got to work for your money, realise there are people out there who never want to work for their money, realise that there are issues in their local community that are surmountable if, you know, somebody has the will or the way, but no one's once they get to that point and start living, then people's politics tend to change. But at the moment, it's a bit of a fog out there. Has Britain become ungovernable, was the question we began with. This from Gary, who says, I think it's pretty obvious that the country has been ungovernable for at least the last 10 years. So it's interesting that Alistair Campbell is only being vocal about that now. Perhaps that's because it's his beloved Labour Party that is now finding the going tough in office, and so he's looking for excuses. The problem, as I see it, is that voters have never been willing to elect a government that tells us the truth about what horrendous pain they are going to have to inflict on us to put right the damage caused by the big crash in 2008. It does go back to 2008, by the way. So instead, we have continued to elect charlatans who know they are over-promising during campaigning and know that they are going to under-deliver in office, but don't care because that's the only way they will get a turn in the big chair. It's a great way to put it. Hardly surprising, then, that we pretty quickly get fed up with their failure and start demanding change. But change to what? Another party that's going to overpromise to get elected, then fail to deliver when in office? I almost think that the best thing that could happen to this country is that we effectively go bankrupt, and then the IMF can step in, give us no choice but to make those painful decisions that the country needs to make to get back on an even keel. That's a really good point, actually, because no politician's going to do it. So you've got to hit rock bottom and then you go, hey, we're all stuffed. So there now is no choice but to make those uncomfortable decisions. Could be right. As ever, great message, Gary. Thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000. More calls on the way next on Talk.
It is the slow political death of a Prime Minister. I don't really feel sorry for him. It's his own grave misjudgment. You know, anybody with... I mean, if he's this forensic lawyer, how on earth could you not see that Peter Mandelson is a catastrophe, is a disaster, and that it happens again and again and again? So on a human level, you think, well, it must be quite tough for him. But on a political level, given much of what he's done, I don't feel sorry.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is it just the Labour Party? Is it Britain as a system that feels kind of broken? Has Britain become ungovernable? Specifically on the Labour Party, we're going to talk to Dale Vince, the Green entrepreneur and, of course, Labour donor, who's very animated about getting Labour into power. And, of course, he believes that they are still the best party with all the overarching environmental credentials to get done what Dale and others would like to see done. What does he think about what's happened to this once proud party of the working classes? Can it survive? Can it go forward? Will Keir Starmer be gone come May the 7th or just beyond? We've got by-election before then as well. Paul's in Newport. Are we ungovernable, Paul? Afternoon.
Afternoon to you, and good to speak to you again.
You too.
I don't believe anywhere is ungovernable. What happens? What has to happen though, is depending on the people you're trying to govern, you have to change your style. It's a bit like a management style.
Yeah.
If you look across the globe, okay, I mean, look at the really bad bits, the really dodgy areas of the world, like the South Africa or parts of Eastern Africa. Right,
I thought you were talking about France for a second. Sorry. Go on.
But think of the worst place on the planet. Okay, it's still governed. It's just governed in a particular way.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Right, so everywhere is governable, but you just have to choose a sort of a management style to do it, and that's dependent on where you are. So the problem is over here is we couldn't do what they do in other parts because we don't get out the big batons and beat people and people disappear off the streets. I do think, though, one of the things that's going to have to happen for us to become more easily governable is we must stop pandering to sort of all the spoilt brats, the sort of the petulant kids. Yeah. I don't mean literally kids. I mean adults who go in, but
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. At some point, someone's going to have to. We all know someone, okay, who's just winging the system. They ain't going to work. They can get more on the benefit. Someone somewhere has got to say, you're going to have to get off your butt and work. You don't like what I say, but I'm going to say it. We got to break away from this trying to keep everyone happy. You cannot keep everyone happy.
Yeah.
The best any government can do is keep the majority happy. Just accept. If any government, if you could get sort of like 70% of the population on your side, don't worry about the sort of 10% of this and 10% of that and 10% of that. They're small fry. Get the.
But it never used to happen, did it? It was all pretty simple. If a political party got into government and it wasn't one that you voted for, then people didn't tend to lose their minds over it. They kind of got on with it and hoped that they might not be your party, but you want them to do well because it's your government, and give it 4 years and your guys will come in. But now we seem to be in this place where there's so many elements to society, like this big pie chart has opened up from half a dozen national newspapers to 35,000 podcasts. God knows how much 24-hour media. Lord knows how much anarchy through millions of accounts on social media. So no party seems to know what direction they can't hear the mood music.
Well, I think the issue is that Everything is so fluid. To be honest with you, whether you look at Trump over there with all the tweets, I mean, who would have ever thought we'd have a president of the USA that sends tweets? I mean, that's what kids do, isn't it? I mean, I'm just in my 60s. I don't send any tweets. I don't even have a tweet account. So you've got these really powerful people trying to get down with the kids. Well, they never used to do that. Oh, can you imagine Margaret Thatcher sending a tweet about coal miners or something? It would never happen, would it? And so we find that the problem, I think, anyway, it's only my guess, politics, it's such a slow-moving beast in a really rapidly moving world.
That's a great way to put it, because they always talk about, if you want to bring in policy, that it's like turning an oil tanker around. And I've got a bit of sympathy for politicians here, because they come in with their little wish list. They go to the Department of whatever, Trade, Social Security, and so Education. And this is what we'd like to do. And then some head honcho in that department goes, yeah, you can do that. It's going to take you 17 years. And you think, what? I was hoping rather for 4 weeks. Yeah.
Well, to give you an idea, and this information is probably about 2 or 3 years old now, but it'll give you a great insight, right? How many acts of parliament do you think are passed in a year? In 1 year, how many acts of parliament do you think are passed?
Go on.
Now, bear in mind, we've got 650,000 civil servants.
Yeah.
650. Right? So how many acts of parliament are passed in 1 year?
Go on, give us a. Well, okay, let me guess. You're going to say it's. So in a year.
Yeah, on average, in a year.
Right. I tell you what you'd like to think are passed in a year. You'd like to think there are probably 1,000 passed. You're going to tell me it's below 100.
Two.
Two acts.
Two. Right. But you got to. It goes to the House of Commons, then it goes to the House of Lords. They faff about.
So that's the average amount of acts that are passed on an annual. I mean, okay, you're not going to get 1,000, all right, but I overstate it. But you'd think that if you factor in amendments and changes, put it that way, that people want fundamentally to the system, you 100%. Might. And it's two things that happen. Yeah, and they often talk about, MPs that want to come into Parliament on the same point, Paul, and they want to ask a question because they've got a personal thing that they've campaigned locally on. It can take them forever to get that question asked.
Well, to give you again, I mean, funny enough, I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to upset anyone, but I met an MP. I bumped into an MP the other day, one of the new Labour ones actually.
Yeah.
And I said, well, can you see the good times ahead? And he sort of looked to me. He said, it's in a right muddle, Paul. It's in a proper muddle.
It's in a muddle.
He said, I don't know. He said, I can't answer the question. I don't know. And he gave me an example where he's obviously only been in 18 months. He'd only been an MP 18 months, And he'd gone to a department, because he wanted to sort something locally out, obviously fighting the corner of the local people, his local constituency. And he was guided to go and see this department. So he went to this department. There's no bugger there. They're all working from home.
They love a bit of working from home. Listen, Paul, I've got to move, but great call. Some lovely factoids there. Thank you to Paul in Newport. I am actually reliably informed that the average is 36 on over the last 10 years of acts that are passed. But, yeah, I don't dispute that there's probably been some years where it's just been 2. Let's get a voice note on Bangor University.
Hi, Stephen in London here. Bangor University's Debating Society should rename themselves the No Debate Society.
Yeah, I see what he's done there. That's, I think the satire boys over there at Channel 4 will be sleeping all right, but I love it, Steve. Thank you very much indeed. The No Debating Society. James in Devon says manipulation of university students has been going on for decades. As a mature student, I experienced it. God, wouldn't you like to be a mature student now to have those arguments? James goes on to say, all through lectures, it was so lefty, it was ridiculous. My dissertation was on the European Social Chapter, should that be Charter, and impact on business. Questionnaires went out to 100 businesses. The responses, a very high majority of anti-European legislation score. The left pro-European lecturer called me into his office and said I was going to fail because I made up the results. I highlighted and showed him every single response, but because it disagreed, you did it again, Finn. Are you some kind of nut job? You see what happens every time I start to read a text, just if you wonder why I pause, if Finn puts a new text through, it completely changes the screen. The lefty pro-European lecturer called me into his office and said I was going to fail because I'd made up the results. I highlighted and showed him every single response, but because it disagreed with his idealism, he put me as a fail. I had to appeal. It's a dangerous indoctrination of our young. I mean, that's surely bordering on the criminal, isn't it? Would you have a lawsuit against somebody? No, I'm sorry, I'm failing you. You're making stuff up. No, look, there's the evidence there. I'm not making it up. No, don't believe you, mate. What, because you're Che Guevara? Really? And you've got a corduroy jacket? I don't think so. 0344 499 1000. We're going to get the latest views from some influential voices around Labour. What is this last 24 hours? It's been a psychodrama at number 10. What does it mean for those who support and even donate to Labour? Dale Vince will join us next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Donna from Newcastle Under Lyme, who says, great show, but I must admit to being distracted. Do you think you could do a welfare check on Georgina from London following her mouse in the house scare on last night's programme? So funny. Just what we would, right at the end of the show. Georgina was talking to us. Her cat came in with a mouse. We do understand the mouse was arrested on the scene. That's all we've got so far. I think Georgina is being comforted by relatives, as the phrase goes. A little bit of breaking news. Keir Starmer apparently was shown evidence of Lord Mandelson's close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein before appointing him as US ambassador. Civil servants included a Telegraph article in a due diligence dossier on the disgraced peer, which was sent to the PM in late 2024. Mr. Starmer has claimed he was unaware of the depth of Lord Mandelson's relationship with Epstein before he appointed him to run the British Embassy in Washington, an appointment he held for about 5 minutes before he was forced to walk the plank. Let's speak with Dale Vince, founder of Ecotricity, Green campaigner, Labour donor. And Dale, good afternoon to you. I mean, is this the day when you go, do you know what, I'm going to become a Tory?
Jesus. No, it's not the end of the world. We're not there yet.
It's a pretty grim time, though, isn't it, over there at number 10? Because, of course, you know, this goes to, you know, this is not a kind of, it's not a jokey matter in the sense of the subject, clearly, and it's about, really, a Prime Minister's kind of third eye, as it were, that ability to spot something coming round the corner and to act on it. You have it as somebody who runs a business. Our Prime Minister doesn't have it, and he's running the country.
Well, I think knowing that I nearly said Mandelstein. I keep joining their names up accidentally. But knowing that Mandelson had a relationship with Epstein, you think most people might have been a bit more cautious about appointing him. But the 3 million files were only released last week, which show the depth of that, not just the relationship, but also the wrong things that Mandelson was doing, abusing his position in a previous government. So I think that's all terribly shocking, but couldn't have been known. I don't think the Telegraph article that you mentioned just now exposed that. And so, you know, I think they went ahead despite his connections, and they should have been forewarned, really, I think, by the experience of the man formerly known as Prince Andrew, who, you know, about whom there was a steady drip feed of bad news. The royal family must have been suffering for years about this. I think they could have been warned by that experience, but they weren't. Yeah. But I do think that one head rolling is enough, McSweeney. I think we're at 3 now, actually, and the media's in a bit of a feeding frenzy. I think there's a lot of fuss in the Westminster bubble, in the media bubble about this, but I think most people just shrug and say, look, a mistake has been made. People have paid the price with their jobs, and we need to move on.
Yeah, but the head honcho is the Prime Minister, of course, Dale, isn't it? And, you know, this was information that was, you know, you could have actually Googled this stuff and worked out actually that Mandelson stayed at Epstein's flat while he was in jail for sex offences. While Mandelson was a Minister of State. He was kind of like the Deputy Prime. So that was all known. So that wouldn't have even required, you know, the work experience in the civil service could have, you know, if Mr Starmer hadn't connected the dots, which can happen, I get that, but somebody would have told him, you thought. So he's responsible. McSweeney's walked the plank.
Yeah, well, three have walked the plank now. I was just looking at the news before I came on the show. Chris Wormold is negotiating his exit now after a peerage on the way out the door. I don't know how that works. But look, his relationship, or the fact that he had a relationship with Epstein was known, but the extent of it and the other things he did wasn't known. So there's a degree of bad judgment, but then there's a degree of this is a bombshell revelation, actually, 3 million files. And we haven't seen the last of it yet, not just on Mandelstein, but on all kinds of other people. I was just watching something on YouTube. A Democrat congressman has seen the unredacted version of the files and says there's a global network of sex trafficking that the FBI have the evidence on, and they've done nothing about it. I think there's a huge scandal yet to come out of this.
What do you think, as a Labour supporter, and I know that, you know, because we've spoken about this lots over the years, that, you know, you kind of looked at the Green Party, looked at the Labour Party, felt, not unreasonably, but for the kind of policies that you think are important, the Labour Party were the only party that could deliver it. Ed Miliband at the helm, not everybody's cup of tea, but, you know, from a perspective of a Labour voter, that probably works. Now, I'm guessing that Starmer wouldn't have been your first choice as leader. So if he goes, then you might well get something that's more in keeping with what you think. Maybe Ed Miliband will return to the fold. Would that not be a good thing?
Well, I never actually gave any thought to who should be leader of the party. Keir Starmer was, and I thought actually he'd made a good Prime Minister, possibly the best one we've had in a couple of decades when you look at the last 14 years of Tory rule. I think that's turned out to be right. He's been beset by some problems, not least on the global stage with Trump being re-elected and the Ukraine war flaring up and all that kind of stuff. I think he's handled that really well. Nationally, I think we've had some problems, some missteps, some U-turns. I don't always think U-turns are a bad thing. But I think overall, I would say this. I think Labour need to be more bold. They need to have tackled the cost of living crisis before now in more bold ways, like reforming the energy system. We get half our energy bills. They need to show people they're on their side, that Labour are on the people's side, not the big corporations. Let's get our cost of living down, because most people are shrugging and saying, what's changed in 18 months? And I can understand that.
But as a Labour donor, and I know you wear that as a badge of pride, you're not seeing your money going down the flipping drain, Dale. Is this not like, hang on a second, we've got this Starmer fella. It's just painful to watch this man limping from day to day. He's got members of his own cabinet who are plotting against him. Angela Rayner, who I know you're quite enamoured by as a political operator. You know, she said, I support Mr Starmer. We know she doesn't really. Probably waiting to those May elections for stuff to happen there. I mean, you know, surely somebody else in the big seat is what you would would ultimately like to see?
Starting at the beginning, I wear no badges of pride. The money I gave to Labour was to win the election, so that hasn't gone down the drain. That worked, let's say, or contributed. I think the leadership jostling that's going on is really unfortunate. I think anybody that's like seeing themselves in number 10 in the future and on manoeuvres should check themselves. They should put the country first, actually, not themselves over everything else, because if we have a leadership challenge and we have a new leader of the Labour Party, then the next thing we'll hear from the media incessantly is that it's an illegitimate government and we need a general election. And I think the last thing this country needs right now is a general election. Keir Starmer is 18 months into a massive majority, an historic majority. He's got a mandate, he's got a manifesto, and he needs to be able to get on and deliver it.
But something we were talking about yesterday, Dale, was, and I feel quite strongly about this, when Corbyn was running Labour, it wasn't everybody's cup of tea, but I liked the idea that there was a left-wing party. It wasn't pretending to be anything else. It was a left-wing party. I thought that was good for democracy. You had the Tories over there. They were in a right flipping mess. And you had Jeremy Corbyn over here. Now, OK, he didn't go on to win, and he tried a couple of times. Ed Miliband didn't manage to win. But having a party that identifies unashamedly as a left-wing party, I think is good for democracy, which is why I mentioned the badge of pride thing, because I think that was, it wasn't a pejorative to point that out. It was the fact that proud left-wingers want to have a left-wing party.
Yeah, it's fair enough. And I didn't take it as a pejorative. It's just a feature of my makeup. I'm often asked what am I proud of and stuff like that. And I'm not proud of anything. I was only really just making sure that was kind of understood. But here's the thing. If you look at Reform, clearly a party of the right, Kemi Badenoch claims the Tories are further to the right than Reform. If you take that into consideration and you look at Labour, they are clearly the party of the left. They may not be as far left as Corbyn, but they're way, way more left than Reform and the new Tories.
We keep waiting for yesterday, not just on that point, Dale. Yesterday, Nigel Farage had a kind of like a press conference thing in Birmingham, and every week, of course, we wait for this new announcement of the person that's either crossed the floor or somebody who's moved to Reform from an unlikely background. I keep looking at the news. I keep searching Dale Vince. You know Nigel Farage very well. I know that you're, political enemies, but every time you've met, you've got on rather well together. Any chance you're the next Sarah Pochin has gone? The former Home Secretary Suella Braverman has gone. Dale Vince over there at Nigel Farage HQ. What do you think?
Well, I think, funnily enough, I had an email the other day. It's a circular email. I went to a lot of people, but it said we're kind of building a party to address the political failure of our country. This is Reform speaking, and they're encouraging people to stand for them. I won't say I was tempted, but in the picture, there were 8 people, the MPs of the Reform Party. Half of them are defectors from the Tory party. The party that for 14 years ruined our country. Yeah. And Nigel Farage presents Reform as recruiting people to fix the problems with politics, but half his party are the people that cause the current problems with politics. And it made me laugh.
Didn't you get an email, again, probably a circular, asking if you wanted to either join Reform or campaign for them a couple of months back?
All of the time, there's something. But I don't mind that. I find it amusing. I am going to reach out to them, actually, because I saw that they recruited Ben Goldsmith recently to be their nature advisor. And I thought to myself, look, I could give these guys some energy policy advice. And I know they're against green energy, but I have a particular policy I want to kind of encourage them to look at, which is about protecting the North Sea oil and gas industry. We talked about it before, I think, certainly it's a public thing. So I might reach out to them for that. And I think I might reach out to the Greens just to have a chat as well, because I think I'd like to share as far and wide as possible these energy reform ideas so that with any luck, every party, except maybe the Tories, I can't see that happening, might just pick up one element of it and say, hey, this is a good idea, we should do it. On the basis that the more parties have these kinds of policies, the more likely they are to happen.
We will see. It's not going to be dull, that's for sure, Dale. Always good to speak. We will speak soon. Dale Vince, he is, of course, the founder of Ecotricity. He's got some interesting views, by the way, on North Sea oil. It's not the ones you might think he has, by the way. So, check those out for yourself. I won't go into the full detail, but they are there. Have a look at that. Do we need that? We've been asking the question about has Britain become ungovernable? Do we need voices like Dale's to be, well, I wouldn't put it as far as advising reform, but would that for you be the perfect fit? So you might disagree with Dale on a gazillion other things, but if he's got something that Nigel Farage thinks, you know what, that could oddly actually work. Your thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. Richard says, please could you tell Dale that if he carries on like this, I'm going to have to forget my principles and start liking him. He'll like that as well. This one in from Lord Yabba-dabba-doo-dah III, James in Devon. Oh no, I think I read that one about manipulation in universities. Matthew says, now this is interesting, we were asking the question about where we're at with our democracy and has Britain become ungovernable. It says, Ian, the worst Prime Minister in history is Keir Starmer, but the worst damage done to the UK was done by Tony Blair, and Alistair Campbell was the architect behind those changes. Closer ties with Europe, incorporation of the ECHR into legislation, the removal of polytechnics, the turning universities into profit centres to the detriment of immigration. Need I go on? So quite frankly, I'm not interested in a word Alistair Campbell has to say, says Matthew in Cheltenham. Great message. 0344 499 1000. The Voice of Doom is back. We gave it a rest yesterday. There was too much news going on. Stand by for the Voice of Doom and more of your calls on the way. This is Talk.
The reality is you've got a dud leader, but you've got a load of dud people who can possibly take over. You think that's not going to actually make things any better, and they're not quite ready yet. And he's been given a stay of execution for a couple of months, and then until the inevitable happens. You know it, I know it, the voters know it. The only person who probably doesn't know it is the Prime Minister.
I disagree. I think the reception he received in the Parliamentary Labour Party last night was actually genuine. I think people are annoyed with Keir Starmer to a degree.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
We are back, 10 to 3. Before we get back to the calls, don't go away. In London, we'll be chatting on the big issues there. Voice of Doom, day 13. For those who don't know, and I'd be staggered if there are any who don't know, this is fast becoming, of course, radio's most listened to and talked about feature. All right, sort of. It's a mystery... It's a mystery voice. We're not reinventing any wheels here. It's the mystery voice, but it's always political. So you are looking for someone who is politician, usually young, old, left or right, dead or alive. Who is this?
This is your chance.
Let's hear that again.
This is your chance.
Any ideas? 87222. Message only, don't phone in. There ain't any big glamorous prizes. This is not the 1% Club or even 321. This is the feature that has got the nation talking. Very simple question. Who is this?
This is your chance.
87222. If we get a right answer, we will tell you after the news, but only if we get the right answer. Ian is down in London. Ian, what have you got for us? Hi.
Well, first of all, I think who the mystery is, but don't worry. I won't say a word.
All right.
Right. I never thought I'd be on a caller to you just after Mr. Vince.
Yeah.
Any party that has him, don't bother phoning me. Right. Okay.
He speaks well of you, I've got to say.
Oh, no, I don't care what he thinks about me, but I know what I think about him.
All right.
Right. Starmer.
Yes.
Quite simply, everything to the reason why he should be gone has gone under the bridge, because quite simply this whole thing with Mandelson, which must maybe, as you said, with the media and everything else like that, with the Mandelson sort of case, but realistically children are not, like girls are not allowed safe outside the house under him. You've got the people that are worse off under him. The only thing which I've not heard in the last couple of days from him is favourite saying breakfast clubs not come up. But it's the whole lot behind him that
loves a breakfast club.
Yeah. Oh, does he love a breakfast club? And then it's no good, because if he goes to a breakfast club, he'll be back to Mandelson. Right?
Yeah, true.
Right? But it's all that sort of way that really, that's all been swept under the carpet. But if you ask most people in the UK what they don't like about Starmer, or the average person, and that's why they go to reform, is immigration, immigration, immigration. And the grooming gangs and everything else. It's nothing to do with Mandelson. Most of them are just they're just pleased that maybe he's being caught out on something.
Yeah.
And that's down to, I hate to say it, to the mainstream media, because a lot of them all said yes, they wanted the Tories out. He was the next thing.
When you say the mainstream media wanted the Tories out, that's always interesting, that, because the mainstream media are now being accused of being the Tories who want to get Labour out.
No, it's if you take it, definitely not with talk radio. Definitely not talk radio.
No, but if you look through, I mean, most media don't have and are not allowed to have, other than newspapers, a preference in that respect.
But the thing is, the way that they do the interviews and the way it comes across with people that you used to work with, they were always on the case, get rid of Tories, get rid of Tories, get rid of Tories. They've done this, they've done that, and everything else. And quite simply, now, come back to roost to hit them in the neck, because quite simply, what they were backing has now come out to be exactly the same.
But they would say we were never backing it, we were just reporting on the carnage. It's what's interesting, Ian, is today I'm now seeing people say not just that the mainstream media are supporting the Tories because they want to get Starmer out. I'm even seeing people posting things that Chris Mason, the BBC's political editor, is a reform stooge. And that it's not even the Tories. They're suggesting the media is kind of stitched up with reform people now.
Because the whole thing is, if you were to keep saying, right, you've got to support this person, and suddenly that person is wrong, you've got to suddenly backtrack and say, oh yeah, let's go on to this one. Maybe he'll do better. But as you've said in the past, and let's say with the right, whoever comes in tomorrow, it's the same thing as I said with Labour. Right, to try and fix the country, the economy, they've got no chance in one 5-year session. Yeah. They won't have it. It is in such a bad sort of way. All the other things, yes, they can sort of get on top of. But that's where sometimes with reform, I've not heard any agendas of how they're going to sort out that side of it. That's where the only thing they promote all the time is immigration.
All right.
And
On
that's
that.
it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Ian, thank you very much indeed for that. On Ungovernable Britain, here's a voice note from Andy.
It's not often that I agree with Alistair Campbell, so I won't do that. However, he's half right. It's the standard of government that we've got. We've got better. We've got captains of industry. We've got shop stewards made their way up from the bottom. They understand. Political university graduates just don't get it. And this is why we've got the problem we've got. The problem really started with Alistair Campbell and Tony Blair.
Yeah, all roads lead to Campbell, seems to be the central allegation. Let's get a quick word from Peter in Oxfordshire on the ungovernable nature of our country. Peter, what do you think?
I think we're finding, Ian, that the country is becoming more ungovernable. First of all, I think we need to see the way disorderly behaviour is taking place on the street, and the police are not taking any notice. Then we're finding that juries are not being prepared to convict people who commit crimes for political reasons. Like protesters who create criminal damage. I shouldn't.
Do we know that that's for political reasons?
Well, I think those are the defences that they put forward.
I mean, the fellas, the guys from Greenpeace or whatever it was, who
Palestine Action, you mean?
No, the Greenpeace, the guys that were up the Just Stop Oil people. Sorry, that lot. I mean, one of them's doing a 7-year prison stretch at the moment, the longest of all of these stories.
Yeah, I think that. As I say, I think if you take things like the Colston statue in Bristol, for example, the defence, I mean, the Court of Appeal tried to stop it in the end because they gave a ruling that the judge shouldn't have admitted the evidence.
It was always a hard sell, that one, though, wasn't it? It was quite hard for even defenders to go, yeah, we want the statue of the slave owner back up, please.
Yeah,
it's quite a hard one to sell.
I understand that, but I mean, it was pretty obvious that it was criminal damage to the statue.
Of course it was, yeah.
They called Olugasu, was it, the historian, to give some sort of spiel about slavery and all that sort of stuff,
it was a confused picture. Listen, Peter, I've got to run because the news is literally about to happen. Great points, though. More of that on the way. 0344 499 1000. Will we finally get an answer to the voice of doom? Have a listen to the voice.
This is your chance.
87222 if you think you know, and if we get a right answer, we will tell you and reveal all after the news at 3 o'clock, which is next.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back. Yeah, lots to get through as we speak. Keir Starmer's out and about in the country talking about how Labour are here to solve the crisis that face our country. All the infighting, that's a thing of the past, despite losing 2 senior advisers. And among all of that, Ed Miliband has rebuked Wes Streeting after claims the Health Secretary plotted a leadership coup against the Prime Minister. I don't think Wes has got a chance now. His revelations of friendship with Mandelson, I mean, nothing that bizarre about it. It's just that it's been made public, and I don't think you can row back from that now. Angela Rayner, she's got her eye on the big job as well. And we're asking the question, has Britain become ungovernable? Due to a multitude of reasons. Your thoughts on that. Also, the story of the University Debating Society that has banned Sarah Pochin, the Reform UK MP, from speaking to students. Their political and debating group refused to host her at an event, claiming that it was keeping hate out of our universities. Oh, aren't they such nice people over there? And so spot on and full of wisdom. And King Charles yesterday said he stands ready to support any police investigation into his disgraced brother, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Then, there again, there's another massive element to that story. The King coming out against one of his own siblings. More details to come. Lines open 0344 499 1000. We will also have the voice of doom. Will we have a winner? Find out in a few moments on that one. Here's a story that I mentioned a little earlier as well. A new report that has found that millions of families will never see their living standards double, despite how much harder they end up working. You may remember it was Labour's #1 policy to sort this out. Have a listen to the Prime Minister.
For so many people, the cost of living is the #1 issue, whether they feel better off, whether they can make ends meet. And that really matters to me. It matters to this government. When I was growing up, we didn't have enough money. And sometimes we couldn't pay the bills. I know what it feels like to be sitting around your kitchen table worrying about that. And I'm determined that we will bear down and deal with the cost of living. That is why we've introduced free school meals to the extent that we have, free breakfast clubs.
He had a kitchen table? Wow, we didn't even have one of those. Back to the shoeboxes. He is, of course, on a bit of a tour at the moment. He's been in Hertfordshire in this last hour at a community centre there, talking literally about cost of living. But these figures are deeply disturbing, and one wonders what the direction of travel is. Louise Murphy is senior economist at the Resolution Foundation. Louise, good afternoon to you. And the sort of takeaway figure, I'm not the first to mention this, I think lots of people have focused in on that if you are part of the poorest family and you think, well, I'd like to double my standards, as it were, which isn't asking a lot if you're already on the lowest tier in that respect, it'll take you 137 years at the current rate. Something's gone terribly wrong here.
Exactly. I think it's no surprise that families up and down the country feel hard done by, because the story that's been true over the past couple of decades is very sluggish income growth. And why I think that's notable, first of all, is that it's very different to what we saw in earlier decades, where incomes did grow in more like 30 or 40 years rather than 130. And also, I think why many working age families feel hard done by is that their income growth has been much lower than for pensioner families. So when they think both to the past and they look around them, they feel hard done by.
Yeah, and life has just, I know everybody, these are all cliches now almost, but they're very important ones. You know, life has become very expensive, whether it's your energy bill, whether it's your council tax. I'm part of that cohort, like many people. If you earn a good wage, you tend not to notice it to start with, but you do notice it because, but it takes a couple more years when you're having a good wage, as you know. Suddenly you realise, you suddenly start to look at your bank and think, what's happened here? The bank have made a terrible mistake. They've taken some money out they weren't meant to. And then you realise, no, this is what it costs to live now. And I do always consider what that must feel like if you are at the poorest level of society, because there is a point when you say, well, this is sort of unsustainable, isn't it? Because this stuff is all going up. It's not coming down anytime soon.
Exactly, and I think why the situation we're in is so difficult for lots of people is that we have both very poor income growth, and that largely reflects that wages just haven't been growing in real terms as quickly as they used to. So people are working. We've actually seen many millions more families in the bottom half of the country enter work, but they haven't really reaped the rewards of that. But as you say, coupled with that, what we also have is this more recent cost of living crisis where the costs of basic things, food, energy and council tax are going up, and that is really difficult, particularly for those lower income people. So council tax is a good example. We all pay it, but it is a much bigger part of the expenditure of lower income families. And so the recent history, but also the expectation over the next couple of years is one that is going to be quite difficult for lots of lower income families.
And it kind of goes against what you would imagine the direction of travel in a first world economy like our own would be. I mean, if you went back to, I don't know, the Victorians or something, I'm sure there were futurists that worked back then. They would probably be saying, by the time we get to 2026, you know, food will be, you know, almost given away. There'll be so much of it. It'll be so cheap. You'll be able to get a whole cow out of a vending machine, you know, for £1 or something. Energy bills, well, by then they'll have heating inside homes. It'll all be sorted. So the sense over the years is that economies and countries are meant to sort of make progress, and part of that progress is making things more affordable for more people. But we've gone the very opposite direction. So I mean, is that a British thing or a Western thing? What's the deal here?
So I think you're right. This isn't what most people expect. As you say, people expect over time, and particularly if they, you know, are working hard, that they would feel the benefits from that. But I think what we can also point to for some optimism is that, you know, some of these things can change, and we have seen some government policies that do make a difference. So first of all, actually this year, we are expecting quite strong income growth, particularly for lower income families, and that reflects some policy choices, including the above inflation increases to universal credit that are coming and the ending of the 2-child limit. That means many low income working families across the country will benefit from an income boost this year. And we can also see there's been wider policy that's been effective. For example, in the budget, there was some action to remove policy costs from energy bills. But what we would urge the government to do is to go further. Lots of these things are temporary or are not quite as bold as they could be. And so we think action both on boosting incomes, but also making changes to these cost of living pressures like food and energy where they need to be a priority.
Indeed. Louise, great having you on with us. Thank you for your time. Louise Murphy, senior economist at the Resolution Foundation. It is kind of curious, particularly on energy. And when you think about, I mean, Keir Starmer was talking about growing up and, you know, not having enough money to pay the bills. And there's lots of us that would have grown up in that kind of setup where if you were a child of the 70s, as I was, the houses you lived in, and I find this unbelievable to think about this, all right? I'm still, relatively speaking, a young buck, all right? So I'm not quite that generation, like Finn, our producer, for example. You know, he's like 5-6 years younger than me. So there is, you know, clearly differentials even within our own team here. But when I grew up, you didn't have any heating in your house. And I tell that to my kids, I tell that to, they go, what do you mean? Well, no, because they weren't built with central heating. There was no, if you wanted central heating, you would have to firstly own your council house and then put it in. Now, retrospectively, those homes were fitted with stuff. So, but quite literally, growing up as a kid, we had no heat. It sounds like I was born in the 1920s. So this is in the 70s and the 80s. There was no heating in the house. And in the winter, your old man had to kind of put polythene, like a double glazing, over the windows and sort of staple it to make a double glazing, to stand in with a chance. When you went down to the kitchen in the morning, your dad had put a paraffin heater on just to keep things warm. I can't, how did we sleep? I mean, how did we do that? There was no heating. We often talk about how the Victorians managed. This is in recent history. You'd think by now all of that would be a thing of the past, not only Yes, we have heating as standard in all homes. They are built in a way, some of them differ in the kind of heating systems they have. But you wouldn't have thought by this stage it would be much more expensive. In the same way that a flat screen TV now costs 30 quid, you might think that would be your monthly bill for your energy. But it's going in the opposite direction, which is kind of counterintuitive to what you think the journey of direction would be. Kelly is in Berkshire. Back to politics of the day, Kelly. What have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hello. I don't know. There's been so much. I was slightly shouting at the radio earlier. I flipped between you guys and LBC. Yeah. Don't know if I can
Still
say that on
going?
the radio.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah. And I was an avid lefty. Yeah? I am a Ramona. Yeah. I'll put it out there. And I voted Labour. I am slightly moving right, as you know, but this, I just find this, what's been said today, I mean, it's anti-Labour, this radio station, I would say, yeah. I don't think Keir should go.
It's just pro common sense, I think. That would be the way to put it.
Listen, we need some stability.
Is anyone pro-Labour? Does anyone go, God, I love these guys, they're great?
Yeah, there are some, yeah. However, I believe reform will get in. Absolutely not what I want. I think they will, the next government. I've had a thought, yeah. I thought, well, they should get in because it sounds like all your listeners, this whole radio station, everyone is pinning their dreams, hopes and dreams on Nigel Farage. And I think everyone's going to be sorely mistaken. That's why I think this place is ungovernable.
Listen, I have made that point myself, Kelly, or I've certainly raised the point that it would be extraordinary if reform were going to arrive on the scene in 2029 and suddenly solve everybody's problems, of which there are thousands. I don't think that can happen. They would have a year in order to, and this came from one of their own insiders, Gwaine Towler, who joined us on the programme the other day, said they've got a year to show that, you know, the difference. People might not expect all the change to happen in a year, but they've got a year to prove that the change will happen. And if it doesn't, they're going to be toast.
Then what? Then where are we going?
We get the Green Party in, because that Zach guy's great, isn't he? I mean, just for the comedy value, you know.
Yeah, I think this country has gone insane, and I think social media is half the problem.
I agree. I absolutely agree with that. I think it is one of the most toxic, bizarre kind of innovations of our time that started out as a good idea, can still be a good idea on a good day. You know, if you only follow, I don't know, somebody with an account about how to press flowers that you've picked from the fields, then I'm sure it's a great, riveting place to be.
Let me just say, if I was PM, I'd do the Thatcher thing. You can't turn. You know, it might not. Your policy might not be popular. Tough, yeah. Don't look on the radio. Don't listen to the radio. Don't look at social media. Don't open the newspapers. Do what you think is right.
Yeah.
And you know what? Give it 4 years, and something will happen. You know. Everyone is just pressuring people, and you're going from left to right to left to right to left. Yeah. We're just battered in the middle, and I think we've all gone nuts because of it.
I think you're right. Kelly, I've got to ask you, because you said you voted Labour at the last election, and after we finish talking, I'm going to put you back to Faith, who answered the call, because she can give you some helpline numbers and some counsellors that you can maybe get in touch with. You know, the Samaritans, they're here to help. Just tell me this, though, Kelly. When you went to the ballot box, the polling station, July the 4th, 2024 now, and ticked the box marked Labour, what was it you were thinking, or maybe hoping, Keir Starmer was going to do that would change the direction of travel for this country?
End the chaos. End the 14 years of absolute chaos. And
was it ever 14 years? 5 of those years was with the Lib Dems, wasn't it? It wasn't even that chaotic.
No,
it's a bit boring.
My standard of living has definitely gone down since Brexit. I'm going to say that. Yeah, I think the country has become poorer, and you know, it's not gotten any better with Labour, I must say. Yeah, but I just think people need to realise. Pin all your hopes on Nigel Farage. You're going to be sorely disappointed. And I will be here on the phone, same phone number, and I will say, I told you so.
I hope so. But so when you voted Labour, because it might be the same reasons that people are going to vote for reform.
Yes.
And that is, I want change.
No, people are going to vote for reform because they think he's going to deal with immigration, which I don't deny needs dealing with, yeah? But I don't think he will. If they want that, I think Rupert Lowe is the guy they need to vote for, yeah?
That's
That's all I'm saying. But you guys never give him even a hint of it. And this is coming from a more left-leaning person, yeah? But no.
So
one
you think we should give Starmer a bit more of a wide berth, give him a bit of a chance?
Of course. Listen, I think I voted for him because I believe he's a decent guy and his heart's in the right thing. If he's listening, he needs to stop flip-flopping, that's for sure. But, I just, but anyway, that's me.
I mean, having a pop, surely, at a socialist is part and parcel of life, isn't it, Kelly?
No.
I mean, it's kind of... it's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
I know it does, but, stop mentioning... Why don't you get Rupert Lowe on more?
Rupert does come on. I mean, he's been...
Very rare. I'm on the job that I hear the radio almost all day, yeah? And I don't hear. All I hear is Nigel. It's like the Nigel fan club.
Rupert was on with us a couple of weeks ago, and he was on with us a couple of weeks before that. Ben Habib has been on recently with Kev and a few other things as well.
Okay,
but
I'm just saying.
No. I mean, I know what you're saying. If you miss those particular moments, then... I saw somebody on social media accuse, it's funny you just mentioned them, another radio station yesterday of taking one particular side. And the presenter replied and said, no, we literally had the very opposite to what you think you heard. So I do get it, But listen, Kelly, we were talking, so 10th of February 2029, yeah?
Yeah, you call me. And I'll be like, I told you.
Well, you won't be able to afford the phone call by then because we'll all be so skint under the Starmer government we won't be able to call anyone.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Look forward to it, Kelly.
Right.
Enjoy leafy Berkshire and that mansion. Kelly in Berkshire thinks a bit too Farage-y. I think we talk about common sense here. This is not about supporting any one party, but we are in... I would argue, and I'd argue this every day of the week, completely I know that word unprecedented is thrown out quite a lot. Unprecedented times in this sense. And the looming figure that is Reform UK, that scenario, if you like, of this party that has just 7 MPs and is dominating the polls and pencil to win a general election, that has never happened. So it's going to be an area of focus. And with the heady levels of ineptitude spewing out of the government and even opposition parties, then naturally the untested but completely different agenda of an outfit like Reform is going to be of interest. One thing I do agree with her on, and I'll put it more gently, it's going to be the mother of all struggles for Reform. By the way, they know that. It's not like me saying that is that Nigel and Richard and David Bull and others are going, what, really? We thought it was going to be... No, they know that it's going to be a tough old journey. 0344 499 1000. More coming from you next on Talk.
The reality is, you've got a dud leader, but you've got a load of dud people who can possibly take over. You think that's not going to actually make things any better, and they're not quite ready yet. And he's been given a stay of execution for a couple of months, and then until the inevitable happens. You know it, I know it, the voters know it. The only person who probably doesn't know it is the Prime Minister.
I disagree. I think the reception he received in the Parliamentary Labour Party last night was actually genuine. I think people are annoyed with Keir Starmer to a degree.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is Talk. This from Rob in Worthing, along with social media. Another bit of tech, the gig economy, we don't need is food delivery companies. Discuss. Yes, stuff you would uninvent. Would you uninvent? Would you uninvent food delivery companies? So I was out on Saturday, and so every now and again we'll use like one of the sort of food Deliveroo, whatever, and you can't, in my neck of the woods, you can't order KFC on the app, okay, because there's not KFC near enough. Now, I've said this many, many times. The Colonel, as I like to see him, who I look at as a prophet, frankly, and the Colonel's empire of chook is almost part of your five a day. I mean, this is such good takeaway fodder. It ceased to really be fast food. This is crucial kit for a child's palate, a breast of the Colonel's finest on a daily basis. But you can't order it. So every time we've ever thought, we'll have a cheeky KFC, I've had to get in the car, go down the road to somewhere. Anyhow, so I was out on Saturday. My other half sends me a message going, guess what? We can order from the KFC. I'm getting stuff for me and the boys. I'm out, so I'm not part of this. 2 hours later, she messaged me, says it's still not arrived. And I said, well, have you... And this is like your worst nightmare. And I said, well, which one is it coming from? And it was one that was about, I would say, 20 minutes away, but one I've been to myself to pick up. So anyway, this thing arrived, and apparently it looked like a slaughter in a hen house. This was like not good. It was just a box of annihilated cold chook that sat there just festering in its freezing temperatures of demise. This was to the point that she said, I wasn't even sure it was actually from the Colonel's. So yeah, there's always that problem with... And I said to her, did you take a picture? You know, if you complain, they ask you, have you ever done that, Finn? You say complain, they say, can you send us a picture of your manky gruff? Yeah, it hasn't turned up. Can you send a picture? Yes, if you want. Where do you want it? I can take it any way you like, because it will still show it hasn't shown up. And she didn't do that in the end. But the point, the wider point, do we need that stuff? Do we really need food delivery to us? I would also extend that to driverless cars. I don't know why we need driverless cars. You think about it, the amount of hundreds and hundreds of billions of pounds that is being put into driverless cars is off the, I mean, it's off the scale for something that isn't really needed. I mean, it might be a luxury for some. So you do then start to wonder, well, what is this economy? What are these innovations attempting to change about our life, getting us from A to B? We literally don't need it. But it's another invention, and it'll form another part of the economy, and it will mean in about 10 years' time, everyone can buy one. So it becomes a new thing, and so the economy keeps on rumbling. Should we quickly do the voice of doom now? Let's do the voice of doom. So this is the voice we played you before the news.
This is your chance.
We've been playing that for 13 days now. It's a mystery voice. Who is it? These are some of the guesses. Virginia Bottomley. It is not. John Inman. Finn's written, I assume the actor and singer. Was he ever a singer? John Inman was a very famous sitcom actor, that's for sure. Peter Lilly, who we had on earlier, no. John Moore, no. Peter Hain, Nigel Farage, no. Paul Murphy, no. Ed Miliband, no. We haven't got a winner. It rolls over to tomorrow for day 14. Right, Keir Starmer has been out and about on his cost of living tour in Hertfordshire. I think just before we speak to Michael in Birmingham, let's have a listen to what the Prime Minister has been saying when he's been talking to members of the public about the current state of play.
I am their Prime Minister, and this is their government. And I will never give up on that fight. There are some people in recent days who say the Labour government should have a different fight, a fight with itself, instead of a fight for the millions of people who need us to fight for them. And I say to them, I will never walk away from the mandate I was given to change this country. I will never walk away from the people that I am charged with fighting for. And I will never walk away from the country that I love.
A very emotional moment there. The country that I love. This is a guy fighting for his political career 18 months into the job. He went on to talk about a number of issues, but here he is speaking about reform.
The real fight is not in the Labour Party. It's with the right-wing politics that challenges that. The politics of reform. The politics of divide, divide, divide. Grievance, grievance, grievance. That will tear our country apart. That is the fight that we are in. And I will be in that fight as long as I have breath in my body.
He keeps talking about his last breath. How many times did he say the word fight in those two clips? I mean, this man he's fighting more than Tyson flipping Fury, which isn't a lot at the moment, to be fair, but you take the point. This will be Michael in Birmingham, who wants to pick up, actually, on the reform issue. The Prime Minister there, Michael, talking about reform, and there's a big fight to be had. What are your thoughts?
He's such a wimp. Look, I just wish I could meet him down Wetherspoons. Anyway, look, I'm not going to go there. What I was going to talk about is that I partly agree with that Labour person that you had on before.
Yeah, Kelly.
Is that, look, just because Farage won't deliver, and I'm worried that Farage won't deliver, doesn't mean to say we shouldn't have him, because we can't keep going with these clowns. But one thing Nigel said a few years ago, I heard him on the radio, he said something very, very pertinent. He said he's convinced there's a fifth column in this country, and I was long convinced about that, long before Labour got in. And what reform needs to have, they need to have the stomach for the fight. In fact, we all need to have the stomach for the fight. They need to be firing people from the civil service from day one who are activists, no matter what grade they are. And that goes for councils, health services, education. And that is going to cause a bit of chaos, because I know, Ian, because I've been there. I've seen it firsthand. I know exactly that the left-wing Kool-Aid marinades, if that's the right metaphor, marinades these places. And reform have got absolutely no... It's a bit like Brexit. Brexit hasn't worked because it's been obstructed. And reform will find the same. This is a very serious point. You know, I normally call it a bit knockabout here, but it is a serious point, is that you've got to stand up and be counted on this.
Yeah.
You might have to fall out with friends. You might have to fall out with family, because it really is that serious. And you talk about the left and the right. There's a guy in America called Jim Jordan, a Republican senator, and he's on YouTube, who made a great thing. There's not a debate about left and right. The debate is about normal and crazy. Normal is you believe in your country should have borders. Normal is you believe there's a man and a woman, nothing else. Normal is you don't have your own people sleeping on the streets while asylum seekers are in 4-star hotels. And so on and so on and so on. And that's what you've got to be on. I, too, used to be a Labour voter. Economically, I'm a socialist. I believe in nationalisation. But on social policy, I don't consider I'm far right, I just consider I'm right. And I know that's a slogan, but there we go. Look, I've probably said enough and gone on for too long. But I normally call about, a bit light-hearted, but I'm quite, passionate about this. If you're going to be a reform voter, you've got to dig in. You can't be nice, because the left aren't nice to you.
There it is, a profound point. Great call, Michael. Love that. And thank you. And you're absolutely right. The thing that Farage, or the whole, I mean, so much to be said on what has to happen. The issue with reform, obviously Farage leading it up, is that this is not a case. What is going to be different about this, if I've got this right, and, you know, I know some of these guys because I've worked with them and I do this for a living, so they know all of this. This isn't just a case of saying, here's our policies and little bullet point lists and a glossy manifesto. This is, to a large extent, almost recalibrating the entire functionality of our systems politically, economically, and absolutely socially. It's that, and that doesn't happen. It's obviously not going to happen straight away, but the direction of travel will be there. Now, Donald Trump, you can love or hate Donald Trump, but he came in with a big fat manifesto of promises, and he's working through them. Now, not all the headlines reveal the full truth of what is happening, even with the ICE stuff. You know, we see the big successes on video, and some people are disturbed by it, and some of it, by the way, is genuinely disturbing. I get that. But he said, I'm going to get rid of illegal immigrants from this country, and he started to do it. I mean, he hasn't even touched the sides yet, but he's certainly the direction of travel. What he has done in making a lot of noise about it, he's put a lot of people off coming into the country, and that is almost the reason why, despite the fact that ICE existed under Obama and all the subsequent administrations, the fact that you're seeing it more visually is the deterrent. It was always going on, by the way, but it's the deterrent factor. 0344 499 1000. Can reform cut it? Lines are open. Just gone 3:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Steve says, marinated like old KFC. Yeah. Maybe there was a way to retrieve the KFC that went wrong. Matt in Grimsby, Keir Starmer is right. He is a man of his word. He's changed the country, but for the worse. That's a good point. Robin Worthing, along with, I mentioned that one about social media. Would you uninvent social media? Which led us on to the Deliveroo and the driverless car story. Would you uninvent social media? I agree with what Julia was saying earlier. I can't believe it can't be governed so that you don't get the violence, the porn, the obscenities, the real horror stories. No one's going to tell me, seriously, in the world of AI and everything that it can do, that they haven't, the algorithms are not good enough to be able to just, that stuff would never get out. So I don't want to see somebody strangled. I don't want to see a kid like be punched in the head in a playground. I don't want to see beheadings. I don't want to see sexual offences or all sorts of other. I don't want to see any of that stuff. Now, of course, the Elon Musk position is, well, it's, you know, there is no, you can't have this sort of bullet point list of, yep, free speech. You can have all of that, but you can't have these bits. Let people decide for themselves. But it kind of comes at you on social media. You don't necessarily get the choice. Now, King Charles yesterday said he stands ready to support any police investigation into his own brother, the disgraced Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Let's speak with Rupert Bell, our royal commentator, who has always big opinions on this stuff. Rupert, good afternoon to you. I mean, this is big, isn't it? When the monarch, when the king comes out and says, I'm ready to help the old Bill, and the person at the centre of the story is his own brother, we should sit up and listen to that.
I think we should, and I think it also, in this case, shows just how seriously the king is taking all these allegations against his brother. He's tried to, I suppose, to get on the front foot as far as he's concerned, when you think stripping him of his royal title, HRH and all that, and then sending him off to Sandringham. But actually, with all these latest allegations, just like all the allegations that are surrounding Peter Mandelson and the implications of what that has meant for him, Andrew is no different. And there does seem to be all sorts of allegations of what he may or may not be doing with his business arrangements, forget just all the other stuff as well. So for the king, I think for him to even suggest this suggests that he is as frustrated as perhaps we all are with the constant stream of allegations against his younger brother.
Tell us, Rupert, what is that relationship like between Charles and Andrew?
Well, I think just like any other brother, and ultimately, they're very different people. People say that Andrew just had a sort of a sense of entitlement. The king is a very thoughtful person who does sees things slightly differently. So I think they are a close-knit family, as you see, but I think at times their patience, and particularly the king's patience, is being completely tested with his brothers. How much has he told them in terms of the truth? And I think that's why we saw what happened in sending him up to Sandringham, because he was worried that there were going to be more, and Andrew perhaps couldn't even defend that situation, and saying, I just don't know where this is going to end. And that put the king in a difficult position. And he's got to, and this is in the king's case, not to be seen to be favouring his brother, because why should he? If he's broken the law, just because he's a member of the royal family, he shouldn't be exonerated and not face what any of us would face in similar circumstances. And I think that's where the king is coming from now. And I think, like he and probably other members of his family, are feeling that this has gone too far. And if there needs to be investigations, then we've got to try and help if and when required.
And interestingly, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is in a slightly different position to Peter Mandelson, who is potentially being investigated over whether he spewed secrets to somebody outside of the country and outside of the cabinet. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor it's twofold for him, isn't it? Because the sex trafficking stories, as well as the fact that when a trade envoy, he might have been sharing secrets.
Yes, and I think that's why it may be doubly serious for him. And for the king, if there is a case to be answered for, why should Andrew not face the consequences just like any of us? And I think that's where it's coming from, because there does seem to be, obviously all these various sexual allegations, and then at the same time, the business allegations, as you say, possible links with China, all sorts of things that seem to be coming out. Was he passing on secrets to Jeffrey Epstein? And if he is, and perhaps then he's found guilty, it could be very serious indeed for him. So at the moment, this story has nowhere near reached its conclusion. And as we know, there seems to be more and more sort of revelations every day with these Epstein files that seem to be affecting people, particularly in this country. And yet at the moment, you sometimes feel that the Americans who may be involved seem to be getting away with it, whereas Andrew and Mandelson are very much in the forefront, and their actions are certainly going to have consequences for both these two individuals.
Indeed. Just finally, tell us about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's new life, what that's likely to look like. He's currently in a cottage. I think he's only there until somebody can be bothered to go down fads and buy some wallpaper for the new place, and then he's going to be moving along. What does that look like for somebody? I can't imagine he's just going to live there on his Todd, sitting in a rocking chair. Will he have staff around him?
Well, I suppose he would, but I think where this new life is, who's funding it?
Yeah.
Does the king, pay his rent? I don't know how it works within, grace and favour, a house. I mean, it might be bigger than what most of us would be used to, but all the same, it's going to be a very different lifestyle. He won't be doing the driving around Windsor Park and indeed riding, where he still seemed to not come to terms with his predicament. Those pictures just over a week ago, it seemed as if he hadn't got a care in the world. Whereas now, I think he, maybe being secreted away in Sandringham, people obviously would like to know what he's up to, but I'm not sure he'll be putting his head in public gaze for some time yet, because at the moment he is definitely viewed as persona non grata.
Yeah, or his foot in the stirrup, as it were. Rupert, thank you. Always good to speak. Rupert Bell, Talk's royal commentator on the latest there. Nobody has any sympathy with the former Prince Andrew, of course, and that's sort of somewhat compounded when you say, I don't know what the house looks like. I'm sure there's probably images online of what the house he's going to eventually move into looks like. I mean, the one he came from was, you know, a couple of dozen bedrooms or something, a massive place. It's called something Lodge, wasn't it, the last place, which sort of rather sounded like an old gatekeeper's lodge, that it was down there by the river, a poky little wooden affair with one bedroom and maybe a hammock outside on a veranda. It was anything but. This new place will be more modest, I'm sure of that. But if you still get a butler and a chef and a cleaner, you know, it's not going to be much of a struggle, is it? I think about that a lot. That every meal the King and the Queen have is like going to a restaurant every night. It's of that kind of quality and the setting. And I know they don't, or you may remember years ago, there was a famous picture that was leaked from somebody who worked at Buckingham Palace of the Queen's breakfast table. And it was actually full of Tupperware containers with Frosties and Weetabix and stuff in it. Not what people imagine, because that's how they quite liked it in their own flat. But I guess if you suddenly say at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you're the king, I fancy salmon en cru or some, you know, nice meal with a certain wine and some lovely boiled potatoes buttered nicely and some great broccoli or green. I'm sure it just shows up, doesn't it? Not a bad old gig. Alison says, when Starmer is given a speech, why does he always sound like he's speaking at a funeral? Yes. And there's rather one of the biggest problems that Starmer has, that he does sound like he's speaking at a funeral. And Brad in Cambridge says, afternoon, Ian, if you're nostalgic for your cold house of the 1970s, don't worry. Red Ed is trying very hard to take you back there for that authentic experience. Yes. We're taking you back to when Britain was Britain. Your place will be freezing. Chilblains all round. Thank you to Brad for that. More from you on the way. This is Talk.
The reality is, you've got a dud leader, but you've got a load of dud people who can possibly take over. You think that's not going to actually make things any better, and they're not quite ready yet. And he's been given a stay of execution for a couple of months, and then until the inevitable happens. You know it, I know it, the voters know it. The only person who probably doesn't know it is the Prime Minister.
I disagree. I think the reception he received in the Parliamentary Labour Party last night was actually genuine. I think people are annoyed with Keir Starmer to a degree.
It is the slow political death of a Prime Minister. I don't really feel sorry for him. It's his own grave misjudgment. You know, anybody with... I mean, if he's this forensic lawyer, how on earth could he not see that Peter Mandelson is a catastrophe, is a disaster, and that it happens again and again and again? So on a human level, you think, well, it must be quite tough for him. But on a political level, given much of what he's done, I don't feel sorry.
know, in the time that Labour have been here, more people have come illegally, young men, fighting age men, men that do not share our culture have come to our country, and we are now facing a situation where our army is smaller than the amount of illegal migrants that have come here under this Labour government. Any government can smash those gangs, any government can turn back those boats. Again, it is about the will of the government to do it. It can be done.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Some breaking news, always disturbing stuff to report anything involving children. Asylum seeker Ahmed Malakil has been found guilty at Warwick Crown Court of abducting, raping and taking indecent video of a 12-year-old girl in Nuneaton in Warwickshire. The Afghan man told the court he believed her claim to be aged 19. He said he had not forced the girl to do anything, had not threatened her family and had filmed part of what happened. This was on the 22nd of July in Nuneaton because she had insisted, he says. He's now been found guilty of abduction and rape. This is, by any measure and for all manner of reasons, a deeply disturbing story. A 12-year-old girl, and I don't even need to elaborate on the details that I just gave you. Simultaneously today, the 15-year-old boy who murdered a 12-year-old schoolboy, Leo Ross, with a knife as he walked through a park and attacked an elderly woman, you may remember this story in the previous days, has been detained for a minimum of 13 years at Birmingham Crown Court. 15-year-old boy, so therefore can't be named for legal reasons, has been detained for a minimum of 13 years at Birmingham Crown Court this afternoon. 0344 499 1000. Let's go back to your cause. There's a lot to talk about here. Is Britain ungovernable, is the way we started. Jill is in Cornwall on this very question. Jill, good afternoon.
Hello, Ian.
Hiya.
Well, I mean, you just have to listen to the news to wonder whether or not this country is falling apart.
Yep.
And what I get concerned about is hearing what universities are doing with the young people that are studying in them now. You know, you hear, I always understood that universities were there to teach students a selection of things, different views on different things, and at the end of their college course and what have you, you would hope that the way they had been taught would be they would choose the right route to go down. But we now have a situation where universities are telling them what they are to, how they are to think and how they are to behave. And the government, wonderful that it is, gosh, I hate this government, but they are saying that if you make a comment that does not run with what the government wants you to think, then you are going to be some sort of ist or ism.
Yeah, that's always the danger. You don't want an obe or an ist or an ism.
No, you don't.
And that's always what comes back at you, right?
Yes, and I mean, universities are supposed to give a really broad picture of the various different subjects and what have you, and hopefully they will teach the students enough of the subject for the student to walk away and make a decision. I mean, what's the point of having a brain in our head and a tongue in our mouth if we have to well, we have to behave and speak the way we are told to by the government. I mean, I know people that have completely opposite views to what is being said on a lot of subjects at the moment. I've got opposite views on some of it, but I'm entitled to that view, and providing I'm not vicious with it or violent with it, then I should be allowed to make my own decision, right or wrong. And it just completely gets rid of the point of universities and colleges.
To be honest, Jill, I think you should be in jail for your isms and your obes. Yeah. They're built. I'm keeping a record at this end. You do, you do know that. We are living in the upside down world, and I know people keep referring to reform, etc. Reform won't be able to do everything, and they may not even do half of what they are hoping they can do. But I think what people are crying out for is a sense of common sense just returning. So, as our previous caller said when he was, I think he was talking about Jim Jordan, the Republican senator, who talks about what's normal, you know, and I think, you know, because people for years have gone, well, what is normal? Lots of things aren't normal. Well, there is a kind of general consensus of what is normal, right? I mean, I think we can all agree on that.
Yes, but you just, I mean, I've always hoped that schools will, they will steer the students down the right road, and at the end of the day, it is up to that student to make the decision as to which way they want to go through life. And you can't. I mean, it's what are we becoming? China, are we? I mean, you can't have a thought in China unless it falls in line with everything else.
Yeah, and then you're in real trouble, aren't you? As we saw yesterday with somebody getting jailed for 20 years. Jill, thank you very much indeed. You make a really good point. We are crying out for a kind of common sense approach to life. I also go back to talking about social media and the kind of things we discuss, and a theme that I've raised a couple of times on this programme. And it's this. Most people listening to this now, and people who engage in debate and talk-based formats, will read the news and follow the news and get annoyed about elements of the news. They might be left-wing, they might be right-wing, but they're kind of engaged. My constant worry, and I always say this is the sort of thing that keeps me awake at night, is what if all of us lot, that's anyone listening or watching now, somebody like myself, all the guys I work with here, what if we're in a tiny minority of 1% or something? And despite social media, which is a bit bigger than that in the sense that there's a gazillion people at any one time getting very animated and upset about almost anything, what if we're just a tiny percentage and the average person actually doesn't care about this? Or they don't care enough? Andrew's in Hertfordshire. Keir Starmer, Andrew, what have you got for us?
Well, you and I have always said, I've always erred on the fact that it will be gone before the local elections, but obviously he's done after those.
Yeah.
Then what will happen is there'll be a run on the bond markets, and whoever comes in after, it doesn't matter who it is, the reality is they'll have to go to the country because the markets will dictate an election.
Right.
There's nothing they can do.
So the smart, just pick into that story a little bit. Yesterday, when we were expecting, you know, the possibility of somebody challenging Keir Starmer, saying, I've got 80 members that will support my campaign. It didn't happen. And in fact, the central protagonist, Angela Rayner, came out and supported Keir Starmer. So the smart money says they don't want to be seen to unseat him. They want to wait until he unseats himself, right? That will be fair.
Yeah, but the reality is, if you look at it in the roundy, and nobody wants to be the Tottenham Hotspur manager at the moment, do they? They're going to let him actually run it into the ground and then pick it up afterwards.
Quite possibly. Yeah.
And it's the same with him. You know, if you look at it, he has no part of the party that loves him. Mm-hmm. He doesn't stand for anything. He's a manager. All the time he says, look, I followed the process. Mandelson, I followed the process. He liked me. It's not his fault. He just isn't the right person. So he will run out of steam. Yeah. They'll elect someone. It doesn't matter who it is. As I said to Julia yesterday, I hope it's Lammy, because if his brains were dynamite, he couldn't part his hair.
But if Starmer flunks May the 7th, so that all goes pear-shaped, which we're expecting. So he's no longer a rat, so he gets challenged and then somebody else takes over. But then they could argue that if we have to go cap in hand to the IMF, that it's not their fault, it's Keir's fault. They're going to be the ones that pick up the mess. They could be given the greatest gift, couldn't they? And that is to govern initially with a certain level of impunity, that it wasn't their paw prints on the tin.
Yeah, but get Justin O'Connell Scott on and ask him what happens when Yeah, Stuart, when the bond markets go after you, interest rates will be through the roof, and people's lives will be utter misery, and they will have to go to the government. It's actually quite interesting. They're done. They're done before July.
Done before July. On those profound points, Andrew, thank you very much indeed. Always an insightful call. And one from Lee in Saffron Walden. After Alistair Campbell suggesting that the country is ungovernable seems to me to be a function of the country rejecting the Labour government and its lack of vision and policy. Most people are happy to listen to common sense and ideas and would be willing to accept a government that adopted that approach. Funny how we've only become ungovernable since the last election. Lee, thank you very much indeed for that. Here comes Kevin O'Sullivan with what looks like a whole ream of scripts and papers.
It's preparation, mate.
You're
huge amounts of documents necessary ahead of my blockbuster show.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I've seen the team, putting it together.
It's pure professionalism.
It really is. Yeah.
I don't know what it all is, but we'll work it out later.
And if you dig deep enough, some of it's Kev's own work.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with me. I don't know. Somebody just gave it to me as I walked in the studio.
Take some papers. It's a bit like the guy on News at 10 that you do the paper show.
Yeah, that's right.
Isn't it? That's all it is.
An Afghan migrant has just been found guilty of raping a 12-year-old girl. This guy's 23 years old. Laughed as he raped and sexually assaulted this poor girl in Nuneaton in Warwickshire. The suspicion is, and we will talk of this, have we imported a sex crime epidemic? The proportional